In this huge, roaring grand hall, Sasha lunges into Heis in pure joy, cheering that it worked, that her blessing is sword master. She practically screams how incredible it is, then tells Heis it's his turn next, promising that once he gets his blessing, they'll tear off into adventures together. He agrees and hope surges in his chest, convinced this is the doorway to their dreams. Then the memory slams him back to a gray, rain-soaked day in the past, where younger Heis and Sasha stand before two graves, and Sasha's voice trembles as she quietly calls out to her departed parents. A tear-soaked heist keeps replaying in his mind, and in that moment he swears they'll rise stronger than anyone, so they can rescue everyone and make sure nobody else ever has to go through the same heartbreak they faced. Back in the present, an elderly official summons Heis to the front and demands his turn. Heis listens as the official tells him how this world works. Every kid who turns 12 gets a one-of-a-kind blessing, drawn straight from sacred text. Then Heis heads to that massive skill encyclopedia, desperate to hunt down his own power between the pages. He slaps his hand on the book, and bam, it detonates in a blinding burst of light. The pages whip around at insane speed, then slam to a stop on one entry that crawls into existence right in front of him. Weapon Master ***. He freezes, totally baffled, and can't shake the question, what the hell is this? The light dies out, then the official Jace demands, so what power showed up? Heis answers, Weapon Master. Jace just stares like he's never heard the name in his life. Sasha steps in too, even more confused, and points out the cruel problem. If Heis can't use a single ounce of energy, how could this blessing ever work? Worry snaps across her face. 2 years slam by, and the story snaps onto a brutal mountain trail, where an older thief, now known as the Sacred Heist, groans under a porter's backpack, straining and wheezing as he drags himself to keep up with his adventuring partner. Reynolds, the party's scared vice leader, swings around with a calm, easy grin and tells them to slow down, saying they'll be there any minute, while Heis stays hunched over, gasping for breath. From across the way, Sasha spots it all, then Reynolds pivots toward her and tells her they've got to keep pushing forward. Heis finally speaks up with a tired sigh, begging for a short break, and Sasha nods right away. Let's rest for half an hour, she says, before they push on again. Reynolds shouted her name while she stayed silent, his voice slicing right through the jeers aimed at Heis, while Robin, Tycoon, and Piazzella openly mocked him for crumpling under his heavy luggage, sneering that anyone without a blessing was nothing but dead waste. She listened as Reynolds kept talking under his breath, warning that this slip-up could be the one thing that stops their party from ranking up, while her face stayed calm, her eyes sharpened at the threat. Before she could even answer, Heis hauled himself upright and flashed Robin a weird little smile. He swore that lugging the bags was the only way he could help the party, thanked her, and told her to rest, yet that forced cheer still stunned Robin into silence for a beat. He kept his eyes on the others from afar, and that same old frustration flared up in his chest, 2 years since his blessing, yet he'd somehow stood still while he and Sasha built this party and climbed to something incredible. Still, his own blessing stayed dead silent, and right then, Reynolds leaned in and pressed Sasha, calling out her leniency and claiming she was being way too soft on it. The records even proved it. Sasha crushed it on her own and bagged the prestigious A rank, but her party, Sacred, got stuck at B rank. Right before they moved out, the party's armored tank planted a steady hand on Heis' shoulder, telling him to stop spiraling and finally get some rest. Heis mumbled his thanks, but inside his jaw tightened because he couldn't shake it. He still had no clue what his blessing even meant, and in his eyes, he was just a walking baggage carrier. Sasha shot a worried glance over her shoulder, sensing the storm inside him, while Reynolds strode up with his cider and said Heis looked wiped out, then asked how he was holding up. He snapped his eyes forward to their road, and with a confident voice he swore, "I've got this, you'll be fine." Reynolds kept pushing, demanding to know if she'd finally decided, but his confidence barely touched her stress. With a heavy heart and a wounded look, she finally nodded yes quietly. Her call locked in their next play, and the party marched straight up to the Serpent's den, an open, hungry gash in the world. There, Reynolds pulled everyone in and laid the plan bare. Sasha would spearhead the charge, Reynolds would hold the entrance, Typhoon and Robin would fan out for support, and Piazzella would stay back and keep everyone breathing as the rear healer. The moment the strategy hit the air, Heist stood behind them all, ready to move, but somehow his job was still totally unassigned. He stares as the party lines up to march into the cavern, and the doubt in his voice spills out. "Sasha, am I really just meant to wait here?" Reynolds snaps, fist clenched in pure frustration, and tells him to stay put, brushing off the heated back and forth. Then Sasha cuts through it all, shouting for the team to lock in their formation. Their whole plan hinges on special abilities called blessings, and one smart strategist breaks it down for everyone, like Typhoon, which lets the user tap teleportation magic, so the blessed hero can pull off a specific technique that's the key piece to the entire operation. Reynolds breaks it down. Philip's true gift is Sage, letting him unleash support magic in more ways than just healing, and with the party staring at the blazing entrance to the den, Reynolds snaps the final command: advance. Their push gets slammed to a stop by a monstrous queen cobra, and with blinding speed it rockets forward, its massive fangs smashing the cavern floor like thunder, while Sasha dives out of the way at the last second. Instead of freezing in defense, she snaps her hand forward with intent, setting up a brutal counterattack. She raises her blade and squares up to the beast. No wavering, no fear, just one cold promise. It dies right here. From the entrance, Heis freezes, stunned, realizing her already gorgeous swordsmanship has been supercharged by her blessing, and that her ultimate move is the flawless mashup of her technique and the power of her enchanted sword. The fight kicks off. Sasha rockets through the air, sword raised high for a crushing blow, and that magic she's pumping through her gear. That's the Sage-class blessing, and she's mastered it. The Serpent snaps back with brutal force. Its tail slams straight into the party's main shield and shatters it to pieces. Reynolds yells in panic, while Piazzala beside him just scoffs, grumbling that the so-called Sage let this monster sneak through their defenses. With their main defense ripped away, Reynolds' confidence crumbles into straight-up panic. "I'm done for," he cries. "Heist," he yells, but it's too late. The rest of the party gets swarmed by smaller serpents that pin them in place. His focus locked on his comrade's desperate fight. Then he doesn't feel the threat sneaking up behind him at all. From the shadows, a monstrous serpent rockets forward, eyes blazing with pure malice, and he whips around at the last second, staring in stunned horror as it charges. As the serpent lunged, his thoughts snapped back to an earlier mission, reliving how he'd apologized to the party after that brutal fight, then tried to make them understand he wanted to help in a smarter, stronger way. All his hard work only dragged him into Sasha's furious crosshairs, and she snarled at him to stop acting like a useless clown. While the rest of the party argued over the spoils, he got left alone, stuck in the wreckage of their fight. He stared, totally baffled, while the others huddled and talked. Then Piazzala pressed for the missing materials, and Sasha brushed it off like it was nothing, saying the Serpent Queen's core was proof enough to finish the quest. Under Piazzala's impatient stare, he shoved the loot into place. Then his fingers snagged a thick, unlabeled tome. The shock hit hard, so he yanked it into his bag with shaky, fast hands before she could clock it. Later, alone at last, he tore into the book, diagrams of a wild weapon called a desert eagle, plus unfamiliar characters staring back at him. That eerie, gut-deep feeling hit again, almost identical to the day he first got his blessing. He pushed to show his discovery to the party when they finally regrouped, but they were already packing up to go, so Reynolds shouted his name, and Heis snapped his eyes up from the book, hopeful, as the whole crew swept in toward his table. His hope got obliterated in a blink. Before he could even get a word out, Sasha hit him with a ruthless final verdict: "You should leave this party." Those words slammed into him, and pure disbelief took over. He grabbed Sasha's attention and begged, did she truly forget the promise they swore to each other? She turned away, jaw set like the truth had teeth, and yeah, she'd never really forgotten. But with the party so close to snagging an air rank, she'd already decided he was just a harmless little birdie, nothing that mattered. She slammed a pouch onto the table, his severance, and then set it straight. She was done chasing that dream of joining the strongest party because she'd realized she didn't belong there anymore. Reynolds tossed a tiny pouch of coins onto a nearby barrel, muttered a dismissive apology, and handed him the money to get home, leaving him staring in shock. The vice leader leaned in close, slapped his hand on the high shoulder with a smug grin, and swore he'd make the party's fame roar all the way to his faraway hometown. He kept going, saying it straight. There was simply no room left for heists in their ranks anymore. He finally steadied his voice, then shot a look past Reynolds at the others, wondering if he'd just been waiting for this one perfect second, only for Reynolds to get hit with the accusation and freeze in shock. Before anyone could even speak, Philip blew up, furious at the idea of tossing out Heist, and shouted that Heist had a special blessing that might one day make him a master. The heavily armored guy snapped back that once their party climbed higher, their expectations had to climb too, and through all that chaos, Sasha just stood there, stone still, saying nothing. Phillips wouldn't stop protesting. He kept grilling Reynolds' judgment and demanded to know what happens to the Heist now that Reynolds dug in and refused to back down on his move. Reynolds shrugged off the outburst like it was nothing, snapped his icy eyes back to the Heist crew, and in fake calm, pleased tone, demanded he get out of the party. He dropped the money pouch on the table, calling it a sweet little token of their goodwill, but before he could turn around, Heist slid in from behind and flat out refused, saying he didn't need a thing. Suddenly, Heist's quiet no shattered into pure rage. He snapped around, slapped the pouch out of their hands, and roared that he didn't need their money. Then he clenched his fist, screamed that he was leaving right now, and swore he'd never, ever back down. His eyes blazed with fierce resolve as he spat out one last brutal promise. He'd never become a quitter, never like Sasha. Sasha's eyes went wide as his furious accusation about how she used teammates to reach her goals crashed into the silence, and his words kept echoing like a punch she couldn't dodge. With her mind stuck on empty, Reynolds strode in and calmly called her by name, while behind them, Heis was still roaring that vow, never giving up. He dropped to one knee in front of the quiet girl, begged her to tell him if this was really what she wanted, then reassured her it was okay, she only needed one thing, for Heis to die. Sasha stared at the ground, said it wasn't a bother, and apologized for forcing him to clean up the mess. Under a crescent moon later that night, Reynolds told her it didn't matter if she hated him for what he'd done. Then Sasha just breathed his name like it was all she could say. 2 months crawled by, and now he was alone. Heist let out a tired, heavy sigh. He strode through the roaring hall with a huge basket strapped to his back. Then an adventurer at a nearby table clocked him and pointed like, "That's him." After all, he just wiped out 30 goblins, and now he was daring himself to go even harder. You shrug it off, but the whispers chase you anyway. Other adventurers start joying about that kid from the sacred party who got booted out, laughing because he's out here picking flowers and messing around alone. Their cutting words hit him like a slap. His face hardened, his fist snapped shut, and he thought, all that brat did was soil the party's name, or maybe my teammates just never cared about me. On a wooden pier, 2 sets of footsteps crash in sync, ornate armored boots thumping out a crisp, confident rhythm, while plain leather taps back with quieter weight, until the moment they stop mid-step. Their synchronized footsteps slam to a stop when Sasha shoots up a hand and yanks Heis to a halt. He whips around, stunned, while Reynolds, Piazzala, and Robin stare from just a short distance away, and Sasha calls out his name with a deadly serious tone. He glares back, and shock rips across his face the second she lays down her command. Head south to the Dazara Kingdom, track down the Damplins, and there you'll find those rare white medicinal herbs to brew recovery potions. The request just hangs there, and he can't help but doubt the task, because those herbs she rattled off sound impossible. As he finally starts to process the order, the rest of the party is already slipping out. Sasha flashes him a quick goodbye and strides away. Reynolds shoots Sasha a smirk and asks if Heis will even track down those white herbs for them, and when Heis watches him walk off, it clicks. Those herbs have to be crazy valuable if the party sent for cash, meaning he's been handed an errand. As she turns to leave, a soft, knowing smile lifts Sasha's lips. She's absolutely sure he's going to crush it and succeed. Her silent confidence hits him like a spark, and he clenches the paper with her instructions tighter and tighter. Sure, the destination is miles away, but his resolve is iron because he's going. The next day, his journey dumps him in soggy lands, and when he crests the hill, his breath slams to a stop. There, an endless sea of spotless white flowers stretches out forever, so gorgeous he can't even speak. Odd's eyes lock on the sea of blossoms, and he wades in like he's stepping into destiny. Then he starts his job, plucking herbs with steady hands and dropping them into a basket, while he quietly clocks that the rest of the party isn't there beside him. Left to tackle it by himself, gratitude hits him hard. He looks up with a real smile and thinks, I've got to thank them. Who knows, maybe their shared dreams will become real one day. He snaps his head over his shoulder, and a huge shadow suddenly slams across the sea of white herbs. Then he blurts out, what the heck just caused that? His eyes blow wide with pure terror. Towering over him is a monstrous bipedal dragon, wrapped in jagged dark scales and armed with deadly shark-like claws. He froze on the spot, staring up in stunned disbelief at the massive beast looming over him in that calm, peaceful field. The creature rips the air with a deafening roar. Panic crashes in as he realizes that this thick wall of herbs gives him zero way out, and his legs start shaking like crazy. He unleashes a desperate scream as the dragon rockets toward him, its colossal body swallowing the entire sky. The attack slams him like a missile, launching him through the air. Then he crashes hard into the rocky ground, and the hit rips a painful gasp straight from his lungs. From up high, Reynolds watches the whole mess unfold, stone cold and unreadable. His mind circles one question, why Sasha would send Heist here, right to this exact spot, and the answer hits hard. The kid's just a nuisance, nothing more, ruining the vibe for everyone. Battered and bleeding, the Heist hits him with one last memory. Sasha's smiling face flashes in his head, then despair crashes down as he lies before the beast, wondering if he even deserves to keep living. The dragon snarls, winding up for the final strike, and then boom, defiance sparks to life in his chest. He clenches his teeth and vows, my story isn't ending here. His resolve hardens, he refuses to die. A strange glow sparks in his eye, and then a blinding flash detonates from his outstretched hand. A burning light gathers in his hands, snapping into a weird metallic weapon, an M79 grenade launcher. and with a primal jolt, he just knows, with total certainty, he can use the impossible thing. The dragon unleashes a thunderous roar as it rockets forward, and a brand new instinct snaps into place. He squeezes the trigger and fires the explosive payload. Steel-eyed and determined, he hauls up the massive weapon and locks his sights, one fearless thought slicing straight through the panic. I can do this. As the beast lunges, he snaps the weapon up and yanks the trigger. One sharp projectile rockets straight into the dragon's throat. A massive blast detonates from the inside, ripping the dragon's head apart from within and blasting a shockwave that hurls Heis backward like a thrown ragdoll. Right then, the weapon in his grip starts crumbling into glittering particles of light, and when he flicks his eyes to the weapon masterbook, horror spreads across his face as he realizes, was this blessing really just a warning about power that's not meant for this world? Then the adrenaline dies down, and the truth of surviving slams into him. He crumples to his knees, sobbing from pure relief and terror, and that sound flips into a frantic, unhinged laugh. In his shattered haze, a memory snaps to the surface. Sasha's smile flashes there as she hurls a cruel verdict, calling him a wretch. Memory slices through the chaos, sparks a cold, burning rage. He grabs his face, eyes flaring with betrayal's pain, and swears, "I'll never forget me." Meanwhile, inside the guild hall, Guild Mastergeist watches from his office window, then cheers as Reynolds and Piazzala climb up to a rank, while down in the courtyard, Reynolds fires off his thanks, with his whole party standing tall behind him. He takes a sip and leans in like it's nothing, asking about Heis, then casually drops that creepy rumors about the boy have been swirling around lately, and Piazzala, right next to Sasha, immediately goes, "Wait, why are you suddenly asking?" He spills the real weight behind the rumors. He says they didn't just abandon the boy, they planned to hurt him too, and every bit of gossip paints them as nothing but fake adventurers. Piazzala frowns, stunned, and demands if he really thinks they'd do something that vile, but the guild master just takes another sip and shrugs, saying it's all only what the whispers swear. Then he leans in, voice sharpening as he tells them, the moment their sacred party grows famous, the world starts staring, whispering, judging, so he clearly understands why they want that boy gone. Sasha locks eyes with him, and he finally breaks it down. This kid is still chasing that dream they all used to swear by, working to make a life for himself, and even reminding them that Heis had already named a bunch of solid spots for medicinal herbs. He pauses mid-sip, leans in, and demands they remember where it is, right there, in the direction of the Dazara Desert. Suddenly his calm mask cracks. He slams his cup on the table with a violent crash and roars that they're messing with him, point-blank calling out the wetlands. His accusation slams into the room as he uncovers the horrifying truth. The wetlands are crawling with an SS+ ranked black dragon. Sasha finally gets it. Those heists weren't missions at all, they were a death sentence. But before the shock can fully sink in, a guild staff member bursts in, shouting for the guild master with urgent news. He answers the emergency at once, snaps to Sasha and her whole party, and orders them to hit the main hall immediately. She obeys without a second thought, dread etched all over her face. Down in the guild hall, everything erupts into chaos. Then from a balcony, the sacred party surges in, shaking the whole place. Right in the middle of the frenzy stands Heis, gripping the massive severed head of the black dragon like a trophy. His eyes stay locked, cold, and unbreakable. His eyes flare with rage as he locks onto his former comrades, then fires straight questions at them. Are they really so consumed by hatred that they came to hurt him? He tells them he's heard these threats before, confirming exactly what he feared. After his outburst, Sasha just stares at him, confused, and asks what he's talking about. Yet he slams right over her, brushing off her questions as some kind of act. Then he whips his hand toward the monstrous dragon head and roars at them to look, calling it proof of the fate they meant to hand him. Bitter memories flood back, a time when he truly believed their kindness meant something, before everything went dark. His voice spikes into a raw roar. He's had enough, and the betrayal shoves him past the breaking point. With steely, unshaking eyes, he makes a silent vow that hits like thunder. He'll become the strongest of them all. Right before he can even move on his vow, a brutal sudden strike hurls a nearby guild member onto the floor, and Heis gets slammed down next, hard, on the wooden planks stacked there. Sasha drops to staring at his fallen body, shock freezing her face as she screams his name. 2 years later, Heis leans over a rough old counter and drops his coins with a loud clink, telling the owner he's staying put for a whole month. With an S-rank badge on his chest, Heis gets told by the old man at the counter to ditch this rundown joint and head somewhere more respectable. Yet through watery eyes, Heis waves it off and just asks for breakfast to be added. He can't stop thinking, no one would ever guess an S-rank adventurer was hiding right here, with his real identity already out in the open. Heis, the harbinger of darkness. Elsewhere, Sasha leans over a newspaper, and the headline hits like thunder. Brynhild Valkyrie has finally been promoted to S rank. Sasha's eyes narrow as she scans the fresh flood of applications her party is now getting. With his mind slipping away, he shot through the doorway and up the high stairs, eyes locked on something with razor-sharp focus. The guildmaster himself summons him to the Merchants Guild. This guy's an S-rank adventurer, feared as the deadliest unarmed fighter in town. Heis takes a sip of his drink, then shoots the guildmaster a question. Why am I here? Jace boasts that he heard Heis single-handedly wiped out an S-plus mithril ogre, and he even claims he taught the kid well, until Heis snaps back, demanding when Jace ever had the nerve to call himself his teacher. These creatures' strength isn't guessed, it's ranked on a strict ladder, from the weakest F all the way up to the terrifying SSS, and somehow, even at the top, nobody has ever officially logged a real SSS monster. He stands there staring at a mountain of harvested monster parts, while Heist hears Geist say that if they processed it more carefully, they'd pull in way more materials. Then Heist just mumbles that his blessing might be a little too intense. Geist derails the whole conversation, then shoves a wax-sealed envelope into Heist's hands and explains it's an invite to the S-rank ceremony, leaving Heist stunned, because he's sure he already got one. He stared at the Heist's letter, clocking the royal seal shining on the parchment. The guild master snapped, asking if the royal family was backing the whole operation too. Then Heist fired back that the message didn't come from the guild at all, it was straight from the royals. Heist scoffed in his head at how grandiose the whole thing was, because the first king didn't just preach the legend of the Adventurer King, he was the very first S-rank adventurer himself. The guild master laid it all on the line. If he got this right, the royal family would recognize him as the real-deal S-rank adventurer, and the heirs to the throne were watching every move. To earn that full stamp of approval, Heist had to finish the exact task they handed him. Right as Jace pieced it all together, he threw in one last, game-changing detail. Sasha was there too, and the moment the camera caught motion, the alarm blared, sensing her right behind him. His face turned stone cold, and his armored fist snapped tight as he spun back to Jace, dropping his voice to ask how anyone could ever forget what happened between them. The guys coolly said, yeah, he told Sasha about Heis a bunch of times, and suddenly that bitter memory clawed at him. Sasha, boxed in by her party, calling him nothing but dead weight. Then the guildmaster's voice sliced right through, asking if Heis got kicked out for being weak or for something else, but the truth stayed the same. He was expelled. His whole Heist vibe snapped into cold acceptance. He shrugged it off, saying he had no opinion, just this brutal truth. The weak get pushed aside, and that's exactly how you forge yourself into something stronger. As he talked, Sasha slipped out of the room behind him without a sound. He locked eyes with the guild master, jaw set with unshakable resolve, and flat-out declared he'd never quit his quest to get stronger. His resolve burned hotter with raw, bitter rage. Then the word comrades hit his mind, followed by a silent sneer. Nonsense with. Once his piece was settled, Heis spun on his heel and marched out of the office, while the guys stayed put, sipping from his cup. He watched the young man disappear and thought, even with power in his hands, he was still just a kid. Months dragged by, and then, right inside the royal palace's grand halls, two figures get yanked into the spotlight as an official calls out, Adventurer Sasha and Adventurer Heis, with both of them standing there, heads bowed. From his throne in the kingdom of Hybelk, Barbaros, the 13th king, looms over them and makes his decree. In the name of the kingdom, he's calling the shots, and only he will decide how their final S-rank promotion trials end. On the sidelines, two young royals, Cress and Uni, watch everything unfold with sharp, silent intensity. First, Prince Cress steps forward and declares the first task. He tells Sasha the kingdom has chosen her to subdue a crystal golem that just burst up in a nearby mine, and then he adds that he'll be riding out with her. Sasha says yes and calls out the honor. Then the whole room snaps to attention as Nguyen, all fired up, steps forward and thrusts a document into Heis's hands, insisting it's finally his turn. His mission sits in the east, right in Philia, deep inside the Gagasia sacred forest, in the lands ruled by the Ador kingdom. First, Princess Maine grins and declares she's joining Heis on his quest, but when he turns back, shock freezes him mid-protest. He flat-out shuts her down, insisting she can't possibly come with him, and the princess is left staring in shock as the whole court watches in silence. Then, for the first time, a dark eye patch slips into view over his right eye. Nguyen snaps, demanding to know why, insisting that with her watching over him, his odds on the S-rank mission would skyrocket. Then she drills in, asking if he's even accounting for his companions in the plan. Heis brushes her off and snaps straight to the king, telling him this mission is too dangerous and that he'll go solo, begging forgiveness as Sasha watches in sharp, worried silence. King Barbaro doesn't even get offended. His defiance sparks a massive roar of laughter, his whole body trembling with amusement, leaving the people nearby completely stunned. Laughter dies off, his eyes turn sharp, and he faces the young adventurer, saying this is unlike anything they've seen before, but it's the royal family's job to witness how their own rise to meet dangers head-on. He leans in and admits he's heard plenty of wild sixploits, then makes it clear how he finishes every SRAN commission and never, ever stops fighting solo. Just as the king's sentence is about to end, Princess Mewing cuts in, begging her father for mercy. Then the king snaps her shut on the spot, saying he'll bend the rules this once. The princess juts out her cheeks in pure frustration, huffing hard as the truth hits. She can't go with him after all. With it all settled, King Barbaros slams his hands together like a thunderclap. Then he officially declares the crowd in ceremony, ready for the next part of the plan. After the official ceremony wraps up, the whole scene chills out fast. Servants rush in with trays of food, and the courtroom turns into a simple feast. At the feast, King Barbaros lifts his glass and cackles as if it's the final toast to Master Jays, raging with confidence, praising Heis's incredible nerve. Jays can only nod back with a strained, forced agreement. Later, the king spots a group of men staring out a huge arched window at Heis, standing alone in the courtyard below, then admits he should have told the guild master sooner, because he never saw the boy coming with that kind of nerve. At the banquet tables inside, the vibe turns awkward fast. Princess Mayan refuses to give up, pushing food toward Sasha, while Reynolds, Philip, and Piazzala just watch, tense and silent. She clasps her hands tight and begs Sasha to let her join the party on their mission, and when Sasha's doubts hang in the air, she cuts through them, introducing herself as mutant and swearing she's not giving up on this request. Reynolds shoots back that this kind of thing is absolutely not allowed for a royal, while Piazzala mutters through clenched teeth about how their first trip together is getting ripped apart. Sasha just stands there, eyes wide, clearly overwhelmed. Mewing's face flares with pure joy the second she realizes her request got accepted, and she gushes to Sasha, darling Sasha, calling it an honor. Meanwhile, Heis just watches, stunned, thinking that Princess really is something, as Prince Cress shrugs and tells her to simply call him Cress. Later, the freshly expanded party hikes deeper together through a sunlit forest, and the story snaps to center stage on Heis' eyes, standing tall with quiet, unshakable grit as he strides down the road ahead. As night crashes in, he stands alone under a crescent moon, staring up at the endless sea of stars. He tightens his gloved fist, silent but deadly, like resolve incarnate, right before his solo trial kicks off. His thoughts get cut off the second he hears a familiar voice. Heist whips his head around, and there they are, the guild master guys, closing in with a drink in hand and worry etched all over his face. The guild master gives him a sharp, light scolding, saying his refusal of a royal escort was disrespect to the king and has dragged Jays into a whole mess of trouble. Jays can only let out a nervous little laugh and scramble out an apology. Guy's tone turns gentle as he ruffles the Heist hair, telling the boy to mind his manners, but reminding him he should feel lucky the king is generous. Then he leans in and warns him. Since he's heading out alone, nobody's coming to rescue him. His face hardens again, no joking now. The guildmaster locks eyes with him and demands, "So what are you doing next?" Heist shuts his eyes and stares down his mess. He just got the sage's will, but the ancient book in his hand still won't yield, so he clenches his fist and turns that frustration into iron resolve. Guildmaster Jays hammers home one last warning, be careful, and with a quick farewell, the young adventurer pivots to go, stepping out beneath the dim crescent moon as the guild hall looms behind him like a shadowed giant, and a heavy gate slams shut with a thunderous thud. His lone silhouette slips through the massive stone gates and vanishes into the night. He doesn't even get a few steps in before a familiar voice snaps his name out in a panic. He freezes, whirls around, and finds Sasha in the archway, her face deadly serious. She asks for a quick talk, but he snaps back so fast he shuts her down, grilling her like, "What could we possibly discuss?" So Sasha swallows it and offers a small, sincere apology. He scoffs at her apology like it's worthless, snaps that it's all nonsense, and turns his back on her again. His calm finally cracks. He whips around, voice shredded with rage, and blurts, "Why are you acting so polite and sorry all of a sudden?" Then he jabs at the bandage over his left eye, screaming that she didn't care when he was left with it gone, and he spits the truth. After 2 brutal years, is she just trying to scrub her conscience? With Sasha storming into motion behind him, she barrels after his back and shouts his name, but when she tries to drag up that flower-picking incident, her words falter and trail off. Her words drag me right back to that commission we tackled side by side, and the quest that somehow ended in disaster. He slams the conversation shut, his voice dripping pure sarcasm, and demands to know what she's even sorry for. Then he claims she and the others never take the blame in the first place. Sasha just freezes, completely stunned, with no words to fight back. He stares at her with ice-cold, broken eyes, calling her completely soulless, and Sasha's world jolts. Her eyes blow wide, tears surge up fast, and she barely manages to whisper his name. He snaps his back to her in one sharp, decisive move, and Sasha freezes, startled, then lunges forward with a shaking hand, grabbing at the empty spot where he'd just been. As the rain starts drumming around them, she shoots out and grabs his hand, her voice shaking as she blurts out an apology, confessing she was terrified, and back then, she honestly thought him leaving the party was the right call. Her face warms up into a hopeful smile, pleading with him to finally get it, because once she promised him that if he stayed safe, she'd turn their shared dreams into something real. Her plea only fuels his rage. He yanks his hand free from her grasp, snaps her words away as pure nonsense, and wonders if she ever meant a single promise she made all on her own. He declares that from now on he'll build strength his own way, forging a path no one else can choose, and when his bitter words hit her, one tear slips down Sasha's cheek and vanishes into the falling rain. His voice cracks with raw resentment as he keeps going, demanding to know what noble reason she could possibly have for kicking him out, then declaring that her choice wiped out every dream they'd ever dared to build together. With his point made, he snaps at her to keep grinding toward the strongest party, then sneers that even if he were strong, he'd never throw out someone weak the way she just did. He turns and walks off, and Sasha is left standing there, utterly frozen as she watches him vanish. He pauses one last time, still facing away from her, and then spits out the truth. His entire life is shattered, everything is gone, and nothing can be fixed. He throws one final warning over his shoulder. He'll never lean on her again for anything. Then he strides into the pouring rain and leaves her stranded in the city square, alone. Among the world's rarest medicinal herbs sits eternal moon fame, and in an open tome, its secret powers are spelled out, while the plant itself blooms softly under the full moon's glow. Legend says this rare herb only grows on the summit of Mount Gagasia, hidden deep inside the forests of the ignorant kingdom. Inside that room, Heis sat down and sized up everything he had, dragon scale on his armor, but it was just shed skin, a haplon ring that worked like a magical stash with a tight storage limit, and a grimoire so thin it was only a few pages. With his preparations finally locked in, he strides into the Merchant's Guild and slaps his S-rank adventurer card on the reception counter, daring them to inspect it. The guild staffer flashes him a grin and says Guild Mastergeist is busy meeting Sasha, so he has to wait. Then he spins toward the quest board, scanning for any high-ranked jobs for rare herbs, and tells her, "All right, I'll wait." As he scans the posts, a sharp female voice snaps, "What's wrong?" He whips his head up. There's an elf with pointed ears and a bow tucked in her hair, staring right at him. He snaps back that it's nothing, but the elf keeps drilling him with that skeptical look. Their showdown happens right in front of the guild's roaring quest board, where bounty notices and fresh requests are slapped up everywhere. She shatters the silence with a blunt question, "So are elves rare?" And he turns to her and admits, plain and simple, that yeah, more or less they are. He leans in and spells it out. An elf showing up anywhere near Gidera is straight up rare, and then he pulls out a map to prove it. Highbelk and those remote Gidera forests are so far apart that her being here feels downright impossible. From a short distance, he watched as another woman closed in on Piazzala, Persia, a B-ranked adventurer. She flashed her ID card, and Piazzala's face lit up with surprise, because this was Persia's first time here, and apparently it was almost unheard of to run into someone new. He stepped closer and told Piazzala she was the first person he'd ever met who could stand on their own like that, so strong. Then she flipped the question right back on him, demanding to know what was going on with his life. He just held up his own adventure card, and the moment Piazzala saw the S-rank stamped on it, her eyes went wide. Standing there at the quest board, he admitted it was wild to see an S-rank tackle a quest alone, yet Piazzala barely cared about that. She zeroed in on his pick and snapped that he'd just accepted a commission in the Gidera forest. The name Idra ripped straight through him, and his instincts snapped. He surged toward her fast, voice dropped to a growl as he warned her it wasn't any of her business, but his fury got slammed to a stop when a guild staff member called out that it was Heist's turn. Realizing he'd gone too far, he steadied himself in a heartbeat, snapped that he was out, and spun away from Stundel. Meanwhile, somewhere else inside the guild hall, Sasha cornered someone who just arrived, and she quickly guessed they were there for the same reason, an urgent mission the king himself commissioned, meant to be discussed with the guild master. The guy she talked to was Heis. He swept right past her without a word, and his face stayed impossible to read as he kept moving. She watched him slip past, worry flashing across her face, while Piazzala clocked their quiet, lightning-brief exchange from a few steps back. He stormed into the guildmaster's office. There were tough guys there, and right beside them stood a massive, power-packed man. The guildmaster didn't waste a second and spoke straight to Heist. The SS-ranked dragon in the Gagasia region was starting to stir. Then he dropped the real shocker. Idrasil, one of the 4 great clans, was moving in the very same area. He leaned in as the guildmaster's crew started breaking down exactly who they were hunting. Then it hit. The Idrasil clan was packed with demi-humans, led by the legendary hero. The guildmaster leaned in and said that clan might be the wrong word, because what they really ran was a huge machine, packed with tons of adventure squads under their wing, and those squads kept full control, got their rewards straight from the source, and the clan didn't skim a single coin. While he was still talking, Guy slid a tiny sealed object into his hands. Heist froze, staring at it like, what the hell is this? He snapped that it was an introduction letter for Heist to hand to the Yggdrasil Guild, and Geist bragged that after 40 years in the game, his connections, especially with the leaders of the 4 great guilds, would absolutely turn things in their favor. He kicked the note away, then Heist announced his escape from that high window. Geist watched him vanish, biting out a warning, careful. He strode through the towering stone gates, and with the city's chaos fading behind him, he tore onto the open road into the outskirts. A sudden flash lit the area, and he snapped his gaze to it, then ripped out a strange pistol-like weapon in one smooth motion, the mechanism clicking as he barked, "Who's there?" He fired a warning blast, energy roaring out near the guy he couldn't even see. Then he yelled, "First warning, the next one's gonna draw blood." Right after that, a tiny little creature with a grin popped out of the ground, apologizing like it was no big deal. From behind a tree, an elf archer stepped into view and admitted he'd figured her out, then demanded to know why she was creeping around like a thief. She tried to say it was about a request, but he slammed the brakes on her words and told her to take it to someone else. She kept pushing, insisting she was headed for Gagasia too, same road, same destination, so she didn't see why anyone else wouldn't work, and she dared him to give her one reason she couldn't tag along. He leans over her, glaring at the elf and demanding to know why her suffering has anything to do with him. Yet from her sick bed, she blurts it out. Only one rare herb can save her sister. She's already gathered everything else, but that one missing ingredient is out of reach, and the monster's breeding season is roaring in right now. She keeps talking and makes it crystal clear. Staying by his side is a calculated move. The Ghidorah Kingdom is handling the logistics for his trip, paving the way so he becomes the cleanest, fastest route to reaching her endgame. Standing out in the open, he gapes in shock, demanding how she could possibly know everything about his mission, and the elf just shrugs. Her instincts told her to listen in on his plans. Panic flashes across her face as she clenches her fist, begging him to take her with him, because she'll do whatever it takes to save her sister. He weighs her desperate plea for their arrangement, then she throws out a star contract. If she can haul back the herb, he gets to pocket all the reward money, but if she dies on the road, he's free to ditch her corpse, and they'll just stay temporary companions until they finally reach their destination. Her eyes don't blink, just cold, burning determination to win, no matter what it costs her. He finally caves and agrees to travel with them, but the second he accepts, he snaps a hand up and lightning starts dancing across it. Then he cuts the air with one brutal word, begone. He lays out his brutal rules without blinking. She lives and dies by her own power, and he makes it crystal clear. There's no such thing as companionship between them. Once the deal is locked in, he whips around and strides off. Then a few steps later, he grinds to a halt and shouts, "Priscilla." She tilts her head up with a soft little smile and nods, then confirms it's his name, right after she checks his own name is Heis. The moment their journey kicks off, a deafening crack tears through the forest, and a nearby goblin shrieks as its head bursts, dropping dead under an unseen strike. The blast source clicks into place, a weird metallic weapon, gripped by the heister. Perseus freezes, eyes locked on it, and snaps that it looks cursed. She grins and says her divine blessing lets her see what normal people can't, and Perseus answers with nothing but a tight, bitter grudge. Then she locks eyes on the little winged buddy hovering next to her, basically the blessing given a heartbeat. The fairy confirms that's exactly why Priscilla can sense it, and the elf realizes it must be why her knowledge feels sharper, even if she still can't spot a single weird thing about Heis himself. Right when she presses him, he shuts down and spirals into his own head, then slumps with a tired sigh, because his weapon master talent lets him wield gear from another world, and still, he has absolutely no clue what that actually means. His skill opens up a weird stash of weapons, the M79 grenade launcher, a Winchester 1873, a Benelli Nova, and a Desert Eagle, and even though he's loaded with ammo, the real size of his power is still sealed shut. He tells her only he can handle those weapons, and when Priscilla reaches for his huge pack, it vanishes under her touch because they've finally gone far enough. Then he declares, "All right, we're setting up camp for the night." He snaps together a shockingly well-stocked camp in the clearing, tends a sizzling cooking pot over the fire while Perseus watches. Then he can't stop admiring how top-notch and how wildly unique his supplies are. Cooking is finally done. He hands her a tray with a thick, hearty sandwich and a steaming bowl of soup, and she realizes the ingredients are top tier, nothing like the usual stuff even S-rank adventurers would dare to serve. She freezes for a beat, pointing to their deal like it's a lifeline. Then she fires back, "I thought we weren't allies." Without even turning around, he just orders, "Eat." She nibbles the soup like she's testing a rumor. Then, bam, her eyes pop wide in pure shock because the taste is unreal. While she's staring, Heist lounges on the tent like a boss, thinking that for an S-rank porter, you've got to be able to handle everything yourself. After the last bite leaves the bowl bone dry, Prosia turns to everyone and offers her heartfelt thanks. Her gratitude still hangs in the air as she keeps staring him down, and once he locks onto her unmoving gaze, he leans in and demands what's really on her mind. She blurts out her shock and admits she's genuinely grateful because she totally misread him as some cold, distant guy. Then his actions prove her wrong, and for a split second he's left staring, speechless, just letting out a simple, "Huh." Persia finishes her thoughts and tells you the real reason she's grateful. This journey is her shot to save her sister. With the campfire popping beside them, she tells him to finally get some rest and swears she'll ask the spirits to keep watch too. After a bright, heartfelt thank you for the amazing dinner, she curls up. He nods then, staring up at that endless, star-filled sky. A wave of weird nostalgia hits him. Just as they catch a breath, rustling storms out of the trees. Everyone looks up, and his eyes go wide with shock at what they're seeing. "What is that tree?" he blurts, trembling. "Look." Towering over the whole land is a massive, ancient tree, its branches clawing toward the sky, known as the Great Tree, the guild's symbol, and the home base of the Yggdrasil clan. Krisha speaks about the tree's birth with pure awe. She says one of the four sages, led by Ibis, poured out their enormous power and forged that great tree into existence. That bombshell instantly sparks one brutal question: who even are the four great clans? The answer clicks the moment you trace their roots. Each clan is chained to its own kingdom, and together they build the world's biggest power structure. Then the map gets ripped open. Yggdrasil, home of the elves. To the north, Seyfried's holy knights rule their blessed ranks. Only the chosen get in. Down south, the world's biggest dungeon is run by the dwarves, the stone monarchs. And to the west, the red capital, so packed with non-stop entertainment, it's famous everywhere. Right as Heis hits the main gate of the Ghidorah kingdom, carved right into the roots of that massive tree, an elf guard slams the brakes, then flashes a royal warrant and says the royal family sent him to escort them to Gagazia Mountain, but first they need their identification papers. His face tightens as he weighs the request, eyes locked steady, and he makes it crystal clear. It includes the young woman standing right beside him. She stays half hidden behind him, peeking out from the folds of her cloak, and he quietly questions her weird behavior, only for her to hiss, "Don't mind me," and brush him off with a whisper. Heist hands the guard a merchant guild letter of introduction and a coin for proof, and the guard stares at it, stunned. Then an elderly elf with a flowing white beard steps out from the gate and barks an order. "Stand down and let them through." Flustered and rattled, the guard snaps to attention and obeys. The elder whips his head toward Heis, apologizes for the wait, and nails him as one of Geist's people, then cuts him off before Heis can even answer, saying the great sage Ibis is already waiting. Panic hits Heis hard. He clamps onto the old elf's arm and practically yanks him forward, demanding he lead the way. He shoots a look back at Persia, telling her to wait, and a sharp, uneasy suspicion flashes across his face as he wrestles with why the elves' attitude changed so fast, and what kind of power one letter from Geist could possibly carry. The elder calls him in, and Persia moves up beside him, talking fast to calm his nerves. She says the great sage Ibis holds power even higher than the Ghidorah royal family, so there's nothing to fear. The moment those words land, Heist freezes in stunned silence. He trails the elder deeper into the trees, and they halt in front of a giant, gated contraption carved into the wood. So Heist blurts, "What is this?" The elder doesn't even flinch and just says it's an elevator. The contraption glides up, then ding asterisk. It stops right on the mark, and when the gate slides back, an entire settlement spills into view, packed high in the branches of the giant tree. The elder steps forward and declares, "We're here." A long staircase, bathed in warm sunlight, stretches right ahead to a towering shrine. Then the elder points and declares it the sacred sanctuary of the great sage Ibis and the holy grounds of Yggdrasil's leader. With a sharp, swift asterisk SHKRRT, the ornate sliding doors split open. They tear open the grand chamber door. Heis and his elderly elven guide step inside, then spot a lone figure lounging on a raised platform, draped in long, pale hair. She tilts her head just a little, pipe pressed to her lips, and gives a calm, simple greeting like it's nothing, until you feel the tension. She whirls around and boom, there she is, an elf of the Heis standing before him, the clan master of Yggdrasil herself, Ibis. With a grin that says trouble, she calls out to Heist and labels him as Geist's disciple, leaving Heist staring up in shock, stunned that she knows exactly who he is. She raises the letter like a judge's gavel, then confirms she's read Geist's message, and says the old man wants her to lend a hand to Heist. She suddenly explodes into laughter and says the request caught her off guard, but she'll take it, just because it's the right thing to do. Heist stands frozen in silence as she leans in, sniffs the air and grins, claiming it smells like divine medicine. Her playful smile snaps away as she leans in, eyes sharpening. Then she clocks the gunpowder on him like it's obvious, and Heis jerks back, stunned, asking how she even knows about guns. Ibis just smirks and answers that she's known someone exactly like him before she pulls back again. Spotting the opening, Heist yanks out the mysterious book he's been carrying and shoots the clan master a question. Does she know anything, or have any leads about it? Ibis snatches the book, eyes snapping over the cover, and recognition hits her face so hard she whispers that it's a wild coincidence. Heis pushes her immediately, "Tell me," and she nods, confirming she knows exactly what it is. Leaning over the spread, Ibis stares at the open pages, and then drops the truth. This book is Nabunaga's diary. She snaps her gaze up from the diary, surprise crashing over her face. Then she flips the pages and asks Heis who he is, dead sure he's got to be from another world. She blurts her confusion out loud. How in the world can someone from another world read the book's characters? He admits he can only make out a little. Then Ibis shoves the book back into his hands and mutters that she doesn't know what blessing lets him do it. As her black-tipped fingers skim the open page, she freezes. Then it hits her in a rush. She can read way more of the text than she ever could before. A wicked grin blooms on her face, and she leans in like it's the best game ever, telling Heist to sit down and read the diary out loud for her. He looks up at the towering elf and nods, swearing he'll read every word exactly as it is. He starts reading an entry about how Ibis came to visit, sweet as a tiny cat. Then the author, Nabunaga, even jokes about dressing her up in a cat costume, and the second Ibis hears it, she blows up in a hot, flustered rage, screaming that it's all lies. Heist's thrown off and asks what's wrong, but Ibis keeps ranting about punishing Nabunaga, leaving him stunned and wondering what's really going on between them. Her embarrassment hit the breaking point. She snatched the book right out of his hands, snapped that it was enough for today, and told him to come back another time if he still needed help. The wild yank made Heis stumble backward and crash onto the floor. Out on the slopes of the Gagasia mountainside, he towers over the view, stares at the diary, and lets it sink in, how the opening landed on that exact page, and how the whole living book idea with a mind of its own sends a chill straight through him. As he strides on, the earth suddenly bucks and blasts open boom, and a colossal worm-like monster erupts with a deafening roar. Right beside him, the elf archer Praja spits out a warning that the mist is thickening fast, but her sight gets swallowed the moment the beast breaks through. The monster crashes its giant body down, and the impact hurls Persia into the air with an alarmed cry, while Heis, seeing his companion get knocked aside, clicks his tongue in pure frustration. He rockets into action, hurling himself straight at the monster, and when his gauntlet flares to life, he unleashes a rapid storm of blasts that batter the creature's hide with explosive impact. His strike landed clean and dropped the colossal worm dead in its tracks. When that massive body slammed into the ground, Prasia froze, staring in stunned silence, watching the danger vanish right before her eyes. The creature twitched, then melted into pure nothing, and as the magical marks on his gauntlet vanished, he snapped at her to watch her step, convinced the monster wasn't just attacking, but prowling for sin. She whipped around, eyes blazing with confusion and real gratitude, and demanded to know why he'd saved her when they weren't even on the same side. Then he wouldn't meet her gaze, just flatly said her job was to heal her sister. He leaned in and explained that he wasn't forced to help, but her goal matched that girl's, and then he awkwardly blurted out a heartfelt thanks to Persia for the great advice she'd given him along the journey. Her stern face melted into a warm, knowing smile, and she waved his argument off like it didn't matter. Then she simply thanked him. Her sincere gratitude hit him like a punch, and he blurted out a shocked, startled cry. Priscilla fired her finger toward a dark silhouette on the moonlit horizon and hissed that the dragon was out hunting, so we should bolt right now, grab what we came for, and vanish before it comes back. Agitation surged through him as he shoved her to hurry, then come straight back after grabbing the item, because who in their right mind would underestimate a dragon in its own territory? His words came out low, like something was off, and Precia snapped back that her hard work would pay her back in big rewards. His unease got confirmed in the worst way, right as the ground exploded under their feet, and more grotesque worm monsters clawed out of the earth. He snapped his teeth with frustration, knowing this threat all too well. Priscilla shoved past the fresh wave of monsters, and nothing could break her focus. Then she burst into a small clearing and clutched the tiny bottle in her hand. She whipped her eyes across the whole area, hope snapping into panic, because there was nothing there at all. She pushed herself to move faster, and then the truth hit her like a punch. The thing she was hunting was gone. She crumples to her knees in pure despair, wailing that every last leaf is gone, and right over her, Ibis stands there, ice cold, demanding where the Vin Noyat Dan went. Tears blur Persia's vision as she can only beg her sister for forgiveness, while Heis lies unconscious a short distance away. Right when despair hits its peak, a thunderous roar rips through the air and rattles the ground. Then the Tandai Long, an SS plus rang monster, slams into view with its massive jaw wide open. Pricia's face twists with raw terror as she looks up at this unstoppable nightmare. Pricea, the elf archer, refuses to budge as a monstrous giant toad looms over her. Then it blasts out a gurgling roar, jaws wide, while she stares it down with unshakable grit. She refuses to give up, convinced that one crushing shot can finally crack her way out, so she draws her bow, and a swirling storm of magic coils around the arrow as she lines up the perfect aim. The enchanted arrow streaks true and slams the creature right in the head with a dull thud, but the beast barely even twitches. Priscilla's jaw drops as she realizes her strike did absolutely nothing against its crazy tough hide. The giant toad answers that weak attack with a deafening, gut-grinding roar that rattles the ground, and Perceive flinches. Her confidence crumbles as a terrified cry rips out of her throat. The monster's long, sticky tongue snaps out like lightning. Before she can even blink, it clamps around her waist and yanks her effortlessly into the air with a brutal lift. With a bone-cracking slam, the creature rams her into the dirt, then roars like it just won, because its tongue is still tightening around her. A voice slices through the chaos. Heis stands before her, panting hard, his left eye black and bleeding. Pricea, still trapped, snaps her gaze up in shock, but he barrels past her question, shouting at her to get back as he readies himself to strike. He snaps his aim up, fires off a furious barrage, and the bullets shower sparks as they skid and ricochet harmlessly off the monster's brutal hide. Then his jaw tightens with rage, because he realizes this firepower can't even put a scratch on it. He doesn't hesitate. He snaps the small weapon back into place, then rips out a huge double-barreled gun, its muzzles yawning wide. He shoves a tiny, glowing vial into the weapon's chamber, snaps the chamber shut, then spins the enhanced gun forward, eyes locked on the target as he readies a blast that's about to blow everything apart. He yanked the trigger, and a thunderous blast tore through the night as the upgraded round exploded out of the barrel, smashing the gigantic toad right in the head. The blow slammed the beast off balance, and it crumpled to the ground, dead. Heis let out a shaky breath, finally sure it was gone for good, then snapped his eyes to Persia. "Are you okay?" Startled, she could only whisper a small yes, still reeling from how easily he'd just cut down that dragon-like monster. Her shock cracked into pure confusion, and she stared at him, voice tight with worry. "Why are you here?" reminding him he was supposed to dash back the moment he grabbed the herbs. He stayed silent, and it hit her like a spark. He dashed back just to rescue her. Her face warmed, a blush creeping up fast as her expression melted. Then her eyes slid past him to the world beyond, and she froze because the flowers were glowing bright in broad daylight. Heist followed her stare, heart thumping, and wondered what the hell was going on. Their eyes locked onto the Vin Noyat Dan, and as they stared, the petals started to wither, sag, and lose their glow, right before their eyes. Priscilla clocked it instantly. The dragon's blood was poisoning the land, making everything wither. She whispered in shock, staring across the blighted fields like she couldn't believe her eyes. Panic surged through her, and she spun to Heis, yelling that there was only a little time left. Then she pointed straight toward a specific spot out in the distance. She bolted through the field like her life depended on it, snatching flowers as she ran. Then a brutal flash of light in the distance lit up everything, and she knew the fight was coming fast, so she yanked a pouch from her thigh with a sudden jerk. She carefully slipped a glowing flower into a glass jar, then snapped the lid shut tight, locking in its light so it wouldn't fade. She snapped her focus back to the moment, spun the Heist right into place, and thrust the sealed jar into his hands. With a grin that practically lit the room, she announced the dragon was finally beaten, and that jar was his reward for every move he made. She pressures him to take the gift, warning that she'll have to hunt for what she needs somewhere else, and the moment he hears it, the Heist shuts up, clutching the glowing jar like it's a lifeline, his face torn between pure confusion and deep worry as he watches her walk away. Right before he can answer, the silence explodes, someone yells from the foot of the mountain, and a young male elf charges in, terror blazing on his face as he shouts for Princess Prassia. He barrels in on the group and yanks Hai's shoulder, breathless, half pure relief, half sharp blame, and blurts out that they'd been terrified. The princess was gone without a trace. All that remained was one tiny note. His eyes narrow as he studies Heis, demanding to know if he's really an S-class adventurer, and whether he's the one who rode with the princess on her trip to Gagasia. Heis doesn't hesitate and confirms it with a calm, crushing certainty. He stays silent while the attendant drops the bombshell. Prassia isn't just a princess, she's Queen Alsara's true heir to the Deepwood Kingdom of Ghidorah. Then the attendant starts grilling her about why she's really traveling, and his face tightens like he's finally caught up to his own suspicions. That little jab sets Prassia's blood on fire. She spins on him, snapping whether he truly thought she'd ditch her sister and watch her die. The attendant won't meet her eyes, mumbling that maybe it's just fate. Even the sacred Gagazian mountain couldn't save her. She clamps her fist tight, determination setting like steel, and the attendant keeps pushing, begging her to come back with them so they can talk about her succession to the throne. Once the talk slid into royal business, Heis knew it was his cue to vanish. He flashed Priscilla a quick pat on the shoulder, said goodbye, and then strode off, leaving her frozen, staring after him in stunned silence. Later, inside a hidden chamber in Ghidorah's kingdom, Persio crumples into Queen Alsara's arms and weeps, shaking out the truth that her quest has collapsed, that she couldn't find a single Vin Noyet Dan flower, while the queen hushes her with steady, gentle comfort. She grabs her younger sisters, shaking hands, and echoes the same thought as before. Maybe this outcome was never planned, just fate. Then the queen leans in and makes it clear. The only thing that truly matters is the path Prosia chose, whether it led her west or into the central lands. Prosia wipes her tears away and nods, solemn as a vow. She hands her sister, Queen Alsara, a tiny gift, and you can see her eyes go wide with shock. Priscilla quickly beams and says it's just a small souvenir from her journey. The gift is the Vin Noyet Dan flower, sealed and perfectly preserved inside a glass jar. When she remembers how she got it, emotion crashes over her, and tears spill as she silently thinks of Heis, the one who made it possible. A few days later at the Adventurers Guild, Heis sits alone, nursing a drink, while the official behind the counter leans in and tells him, flat out, that he just blew yet another commission. The man keeps ranting in disbelief. Heis not only botched a simple escort for the princess, but then flat out refused to take a single coin for his trouble. Just like that, the guild official cuts in and throws him a brand new job. He reveals a fresh dungeon has surfaced, calls for an investigation, and shoves the official request straight into Heist's hands. Just as he whips around to leave, a voice he knows like a heartbeat yells his name. Heis freezes dead in his tracks, stunned to find Princess Prassia grinning from the doorway, all bright and cheerful. Her return proves she won. Queen Alsara has fully bounced back thanks to the medicine brewed from that flower, and now she's ready to take her duties back, fully owing him everything. In the present, Heis stares at her with a tired, hollow look and demands what she wants from him now. With the queen healed, she's finally won permission to keep traveling, and now she's determined to repay him for every bit of help he's given her. Fueled by Ernest's grit, she steps forward and offers to be his companion, standing by the moment he needs her. That twist hits Heis like a sudden punch, and without thinking he recoils and shuts the idea down hard. His blunt refusal doesn't seem to faze the elven princess at all. She lets out a soft, knowing chuckle as she watches him, wearing amused determination like it's armor, not disappointment. As he spins around and starts to leave, his footsteps softly thud through the air. Then she snaps back, calling out one last time, begging him to come with her, even if he won't do anything else. Her words snap him back to a few days ago, back when he was just trudging through the city streets with his party freshly assembled, and Prosia, bright as ever, cheerfully spotted a tavern nearby and pointed it out. He'd said nothing back then, swallowed by his own thoughts. He still remembers every face from that day: Sasha, Reynolds, Robin, Piazzala, Typhoon, Prince Cress, and Princess Mewing, all locked in together, ready to forge steel for what came next. Beating the royal family's trial and crushing the crystal Galen. At the mining area entrance, Sasha stares into the pitch-black tunnel, jaw set and eyes burning, because she knows one crushing, coordinated strike is the only way through, so she decides the whole crew has to review their plan before they push to the end. Prince Cress strides forward and lays out the whole plan, then points at two identical figures of Sasha, because first, they're going to use his duplicate ability. He powers through the briefing and tells them that once his ability kicks in, Robin will loose her exploding arrow, supercharged by Princess Mia. With the plan locked in, Sasha steps up and tells everyone she trusts them with her whole heart, promising that the moment they're ready, she'll rush in and land the final blow. Reynolds, Robin, Heis, and Philip all lean in, eyes sharp and locked on her. Then she snaps her focus to the royal siblings, and face-to-face, asks Prince Cress and Princess Nguyen if they're ready to carry out their parts of the plan. Cress and Mewing shout their agreement in perfect sync, eyes blazing with pure resolve for the fight about to hit. With their resolve locked in, Sasha snaps his declaration at the right time, then she strides forward with total confidence, and the whole party barrels into the mine's dark, cavernous throat. Inside, the party stumbles into a jaw-dropping cavern packed with blazing, high-purity crystals, and Princess Mewing explains their mine to craft and export, then she makes it crystal clear. Any unauthorized grab means instant execution. Sasha points out the magical scenery to Heis, but he just goes quiet, eyes drifting as memories hit him, because he's heard the quarry view is even wilder from the inside. Piazzala clocks his faraway mood. Panic rips through his mind the moment Princess Muin screams, "Stop!" And right in the crystal depths, a hulking crystal golem crawls out, carved from jagged rock and sharp crystal. From her high vantage point, Robin stares down the crystal mine entrance and calls out what she's found: 7 golems in total, 5 pacing deeper inside and 2 posted like sentries at the gate. Philip's thrown off immediately, staring at them and asking what in the world these creatures even are. As she talks, Heis tears into the details and tells Sasha the truth. Those weird movements aren't natural at all. They're ore and stone that got twisted into golems. Reynolds slams into the moment and snaps his attention to Sasha, demanding, "What's the plan?" He fires back that monsters spawn from something as simple, or a deposit, shouldn't have brains this sharp, and with a fierce stare, Sasha finally draws her sword and goes for the only move that makes sense. She declares they're sticking to the original plan, and with her hand on Prince Crest's shoulder, she snaps at him to use duplicate. When her touch lands, a gentle glow blooms and the magic springs to life. In the blink of an eye, a flawless copy of Sasha appears right beside her, so Robin screams that it all comes down to the princess now. At the same moment, Princess Muin locks in her power and fires an explosion charm that blasts straight into Robin's arrows and lights them up. Her arrow starts burning with pure power. Robin snaps her bow back, a whole fan of projectiles poised to explode forward, and with a fierce shout she declares, "It's time to fight." She loosed the enchanted arrows, and they tore across the battlefield, slamming into the smaller golems, boom after boom ripping through the front line and exploding the guardians apart. With the smaller threats wiped out, the two Sashas rocket forward together, leaping into the sky in total sync. Then their blades carve a blazing, sweeping arc as they unleash the White Lotus slash. Their synchronized strike lands perfectly, wham, and their combined assault slices straight through the 2 giant guardian golems, smashing their crystal bodies until they crack and explode into shards. As the dust finally drifts away, Sasha calmly announces that every monster is wiped out, and Piazzala can't stop marveling at how Cress's blessing just tore through them. Yet Princess Muin is wrecked, gasping for breath, saying she'll need to sleep for a full day before she can copy another blessing. She leans into the mineshaft's crushing darkness, and dread crawls up her spine. Something is hiding in there, and her instincts are screaming at full volume. Her brother, Prince Cress, clocked her unease and snapped, asking if she was messing around, only for her to answer, grim as stone, that it was all too real, and that the crystal golem they'd just fought was nothing like anything she'd ever seen. His face tightens at her words, then a brutal realization hits: they've been detected. He steps forward like he owns the ground, his voice cracking through the air as he orders the whole party to stay on high alert, because this mission won't forgive a single careless move. They follow his orders and march into a huge, dugout chamber marked as a crystal workshop, until one of them blurts out that their haul is seriously. In the thick shadows, a horned man sprawled on rubble cracks a grin and talks down on that pretty white-haired girl. Then Sasha snaps, "Who are you?" And he smirks as he names himself, Crane of the Demon Clan. The name slams into the air like a shockwave, and it hits the Heist's hardest, so he blurts out Demon Clan again and again, stunned, remembering a time when they fought for control of humanity itself. The world is split, humans on one side, demons on the other. That massive invasion got stopped by one lone fighter, but it didn't fix the damage. The land shattered, and now they're standing on demon soil, and the monster waiting for them. Yeah, it's a demon, plain and simple. In the blink of an eye, Crane vanishes into thin air and reappears behind the party, his speed messing with their minds. Then he leans in, taunts them about how they pulled off the impossible crossing between the realms, and casually asks how the Demon King is holding up. His sudden appearance and chilling words throw the whole crew into panic-fueled heists, and he whips around to Sasha, voice tight as he demands they retreat right now. Sasha stares back, stunned and lost, like he just flipped the entire story on its head. Historical piece lays bare just how massive old wars really were. An ancient map shows a brutal battle where thousands of soldiers threw away their lives, battling a swarm of terrifying demons, each one a nightmare all on its own. Right now, the demon Crane strolls off like the whole down heist was a joke, chuckling to himself, mocking his grit and saying, "I'll let you live just this once," while Heist drags himself up to his feet, slowly but surely. Clutching a glowing crystal he snatched from the workshop, Sasha lunges in with a razor-sharp stare, demanding what he plans to do with it, yet he just shrugs and says his work is already done. He snaps them off, calling their chatter tiresome, then smirks. If they're going to praise him, they'd better bring real energy, while a dismissive breeze sweeps through and rustles Sasha's hair as he talks. He bursts into a hearty laugh, as if the formal address I'm using is a joke, then tells me to drop it and go for something more familiar, his warm, friendly vibe standing out like a light in the middle of all that tension. His grin dies in an instant. Sasha pops up right behind him, sword out and blazing with raw power. Crane's eyes blow wide as her brutal killing intent hits him, and he can't even wrap his head around what just happened. Her sudden assault blasts a shockwave through her companions. Heis screams her name as panic grips the group, while Reynolds demands why she's throwing the rules out the window. Still, Sasha doesn't flinch. She vows to wipe out the human who dares unleash chaos in Hybulk's kingdom. Piazzala steps in, ready to move, and confirms the mining permit has already been revoked. In the heat of that confrontation, power surges through the party as enhancement magic kicks in, and Crane only smirks, like asterisk finally asterisk. With a lazy flick of his finger, he summons a roaring vortex of wind and hurls it straight at Heist. He scoffs at the whole setup, unimpressed that they're wasting time on 3 enhancement spells. Then the wind heaves in and slams him straight into the cavern wall. When Sasha blurts his name, she glares at the Crane, ice cold, and cuts him down like he's nothing but trash. Then boom, he disappears and pops up in front of Sasha in the blink of an eye, fist drawn back and ready to smash. A technique, huh? He taunts and whips out a crushing punch wrapped in roaring wind. Reynolds can only scream a panicked warning, as that impact is seconds from landing. She stared down the demon Crane as he towered over her, flashing a grin that screamed trouble, and he mocked her, asking if she was scared now, while his power tore through the air, blasting debris like projectiles. Then he smirked and declared he wasn't some puny fan meant to cool her down, he was pure destruction. Then he shot up into the air, trapped inside a furious whirlpool of wreckage, and from above he looked down on the whole party like they were nothing, flies, and promised to give them what they wanted, death. She dug in her heels and refused to back down. Sasha admitted Crane was a powerhouse of a demon, but she snapped back that strength alone won't decide this. She declared that this fight was about more than just skills and muscle, and she'd prove it. Crane just smirked, amused by her fire and feisty nerve. Out of nowhere, a barrage of projectiles crashed into him, shaking the air with loud concussive blasts, and he reeled back, spinning around fast as fury hit his voice. Who the hell just attacked me? His gaze locked onto the culprit, Philip, gasping hard after swinging that staff. The demon just scoffed, roaring that he couldn't believe it. How could some tiny brat toss him around with nothing but a piece of junk? Right before he could even react, a second barrage of tiny, lightning-fast shots slammed into him, then another brutal explosion swallowed everything. When the smoke cleared, a cool voice drifted out. So, are you done playing? When the dust finally cleared, it showed the whole crew, Heis, Reynolds, Philip, Piazzala, and Robin, huddled behind 2 huge, magically conjured shields, while Crane barked in frustration at how perfectly they'd held the line. Floating right beside him, the elf Piazzala shot him a confident smirk and said, plain as day, that one tree doesn't make a forest, meaning his power alone still wasn't enough. Her words were the cue. Piazzala snapped the proverb into place. 3 trees together can raise a mountain, and right as he finished, Sasha exploded forward, sword blazing, and caught the demon totally unprepared. Her blade dug deep across his chest. Crane staggered back, choking on pain and pure disbelief. She stood over him like she'd won, and Sasha finally cut through the silence. His time playing with them was over. She watches Crane the demon explode into a savage tirade, swearing he'll tear through every last human trash out there, then burn down their homes, and finally swallow the whole kingdom in his wrath. His rage keeps surging, that uncovered eye blazing with cruel intent, until he locks onto Sasha, the sword wielder, and aims his killing fury straight at her. He delivers his threat, then vanishes in a blur, an explosive burst of speed that tears up the air and cracks the earth in his wake. Even with the demon vanishing out of nowhere, Sasha doesn't move. She locks her eyes in place, tracking every step of him she can't even see. At the Grand Habel Palace, the whole place holds its breath. Did the demon gods finally crash into the capital? Inside the throne room, Princess Mewing marches up to King Barbaros and delivers the bad news. Some self-proclaimed Crane has shown his face, screaming he wants to tear down the kingdom of Habulk. The moment the king hears it, a grim look hardens across his face. Then Prince Cress butts in, saying he'll hear the report straight from her, and as Mewing bows to the king, Barbaros's eyes brighten, only to deliver a sharp, gutting disappointment. Heis really dropped the ball, failing to finish the mission. He turns to the sacred party and roars their name like they've earned every bit of glory, then declares, I'll give you one wish, so tell me what you want. Sasha steps up the moment he offers, eyes blazing with hope and shock, and she wastes no time. She formally asks for a private headquarters for the sacred party, a real clan home, and the king and his advisor Bonnet look like they've been waiting for it. This reward is the sweet payoff from their recent celebration. Reynolds, Heis, Sasha, Piazzala, and Philip all partied hard after they nailed their mission and got promoted straight into the elite S rank. Back in the throne room, Bonnet flashes Sasha a warm smile and tells her she doesn't need to thank him for a reward she absolutely earned. Then his face shifts, turning sharp as he grills her about what happened with the heist mission failure. That question hangs there like a storm cloud, but the real answer is way messier. Heis straight up snatched the prize from the Adora kingdom, the rare Vin Noit Dan flower, and now Sasha just stares at the preserved bloom in awe. That flower was meant for one desperate moment, because it was needed to save Queen Alcera, who was wasting away in her bed with a grave illness. Heis couldn't touch his official duties because Prussia's grave condition haunted him, and when the moment came, he didn't hand over that life-saving flower to his superiors. He gave it straight to Prussia, the queen's younger sister. In a razor-close standoff, Crane jabs a finger at Heis and fires back. Sure, you blew the mission, but you still risked everything to save the Ghidorah royal family, and that won't just get thrown away. Then Crane drops the real twist. The king pardoned you, but you refused it yourself. And the moment Crane hears that, his clenched fist screams pure, furious frustration. Elsewhere, royal advisor Bonnet leans in and talks to Sasha in a lively Piazzala. Piazzala can't stop bouncing with curiosity as she blurts out what Procea did next, scoffing that he's the same old guy with zero ambition, like always, and Sasha just stares back, stunned. Bonnet leans in and says Procea ditched Ghidorah to chase adventure, and if he's right, she's out there right now tagging along with Heis. Then, right as he talks, a vision flashes of them walking away together, proving every word. This shocking revelation makes Piazzala blurt out a stunned, "What?" as he demands why Procea would ever join a crew of criminals, while Sasha stays quiet, her face twisting into pure confusion and worry. Sasha's companion blurts out loud, but it only muddies the air, so she drops her gaze and quietly wonders if Heis actually plans to build a whole new party with the elf princess. Meanwhile, inside the guild hall, Heis sat face-to-face with Guild Mastergeist, and the older man leaned in and asked if he was finally taking a break. Heis jumped in, startled, and swore yes, he was. He learns his dungeon investigation is finally wrapped up, and Jays hands him a fresh S-rank adventure card, warning that once they hit floor 60, only top-tier squads get in. The guild master just smirks and thinks Heis has his own reasons, then asks the scary question, will he need yet another card to finish what he started? Once the formalities are done, Jace leans in and tells Heis to kick back, enjoy being young, because he's only 16 or 17, while Piazzala catches the whole exchange and teases him with a question. Does he even have plans for the spring festival coming up? That joke hits Heis like a punchline, and he's left completely baffled. Before Heis can even process the confusion, Persea pops in right beside him with a huge grin, asking if he's still refusing to keep her around, and the shock makes Heis spit out his drink. Piazzala throws his finger out and cracks up, saying Persea is basically clinging to him, while Fluster Heis blurts that she can't possibly be serious and demands to know if she's just messing with him. As the chaos finally dies down, Jays snaps his hand onto Heis's shoulder, steady and warm. With a serious, kind look, the guildmaster tells him, straight up, that this is exactly where Heis is meant to be. He studies a flyer for the annual Old Book Fair, the big event that hits the reusing district of Habak, and it screams one thing: this is his chance to hunt rare books and sink into a relaxing day. As he wrestles with the idea, Procea bursts in with a bright grin, asking if he's going to the fair, and before he can even finish a word, she declares she's coming too, swearing she'll be there waiting. He freezes for a second, then nods and goes along. They roll up fast to the bustling old market district, and the streets hit them like a wave, people everywhere, stalls packed with everything you can imagine. Priscilla grins and teases that the second they step in, he's already drifted off into his own little world. A certain bookshop grabs his attention. Right away, he spots a signature that promises a treasure trove of texts, and he can't help but step in to check it out. Inside, he scans the room in seconds, blown away by how the shelves are packed, book after book stacked from the floor clear up to the ceiling. His eyes lock onto a single volume shoved on a table, *, The Adventure Diary of S-Rank Adventurer, Gerald *. He doesn't recognize the name, so he files it away and plans to quiz someone at the guild about this Gerald later, because curiosity claws at him, and he snatches the book. Right as his gauntlet fingers reach for the spine, a second hand slips in soft but absolute, touching his. He whips around, stunned. There's Sasha, right in front of him. She starts to apologize, but the moment she recognizes who she just collided with, her words crumble in her throat. That awkward silence explodes when the rest of the sacred party suddenly barges in. Reynolds snaps, grilling Heist on why he's here, and Piazzala smirks, teasing her like it's some kind of date, while Sasha gets completely wrecked trying to keep up. He freezes when Reynolds breaks into laughter, pinning Piazzala in a playful headlock, and Piazzala screams in protest that it's not a couple, while his whole former comrade's presence is the only thing he can focus on. The book slipped right out of his hands, thudding softly onto the floor, and then that voice he knows too well rang out, calling Heis. He looks up and there's Sasha, asking what's wrong and calling him out like, "Are you fighting with someone again?" Piazzala, free at last from the Reynolds' grasp, leans in and pushes. Let's all grab a drink, your legs must be worn out. Heis just tightens a smile and says absolutely nothing. He whips around and snaps his back to him, leaving. He declares, then storms off while Reynolds and Piazzala watch him vanish into the distance. Just moments later, still catching her breath at an outdoor cafe, Priscilla leans in and asks if the woman he spotted was Sasha. Heist nods and says yeah, but explains they're only his long-gone old party crew. She pushes harder and drops the bomb that Sasha was his childhood friend, but Heist snaps it down like it's ancient history, calling it just an old game and insisting her past with him has zero to do with him now. Chrissy eases into him and asks, softly but firmly, if he can finally be honest with himself. Were the feelings he had for Sasha real love, or did they flip the whole thing around? Her voice hardens on the spot, and she snaps back that they almost killed him, and he'd better remember that from his own digging. Betrayal hits like a lightning strike in his head. Priscilla admits the motive might still be fuzzy, but one thing is crystal clear: they tried to take his life. His face twists in pure anguish, and he blurts, "How could I ever go back to the way things were?" And that question just hangs there, heavy as stone. Priscilla locks eyes with him from across the table, steady, unshaking, and says, "You can't go back." Then he drops his gaze, swallowed by his own thoughts, and she leans in with one more question. "Did you ever want to?" He could only stare as the chaos detonated. Crane, that horned menace, surged forward and screamed curses at the monsters closing in, then tore into the earth with a terrifying cry that made the ground heave up and smash them flat, until Crane raged that the damned maggots would be ground to dust. The horned warrior snapped his chilling gaze onto them, and his low voice promised nothing but doom. He'd tear them apart, one by one, until none were left. Tracy stared, eyes going wide as it clicked because she recognized him. He was the Highbell legend everyone feared. With a sharp snap of his fingers, another colossal stone beast tore itself into existence before them, and Heis didn't even blink, a smirk curling on his lips. He even praised the technique, cracking his knuckles as he waited to see what kind of face his opponent would pull when they clashed again. But before Heist could lift a finger, the stone beast got erased, its head smashing into dust. Crane hovered over the rubble, grin cracking wider like a man losing his mind. He even wondered out loud if one palm strike could really kill someone. Then he thrust his hand toward them and snapped, "Beg me." 1 month later, inside the guild hall, a maid fiercely dusts the area near a towering banner, while a newspaper sits open beside her, bragging about the sacred party's rising victories and hinting at a looming great sin that's about to strike. While she's working, a door groans and swings open, and she whips her head around, shocked to find Heis stumbling in, completely wiped out. Before she can even greet him, a loud burst of chatter erupts from another group. She whips around, and the maid congratulates the 1,000 party on their promotion to Deer Inc. Their spiky-haired leader just laughs it off, saying it was no big deal. With a sly grin, he leans in and tells you they've been grinding just as hard ever since they joined the Sacred Guild. He quickly makes it crystal clear, this wasn't just his grind, it was his whole party's hard work paying off, and then he introduces the crew, the stoic and the cheerful Tenna, who hits like a fighter in combat. Even with pride on his shoulders, Lauren the leader suddenly blurts out, totally stunned. He admits he got lucky to be accepted into the sacred, but he can't wrap his head around it. Why the moment he joins, they slap him with a young girl. His outburst sparks a swirl of reactions. Tennessee looks on with worry, Matt grumbles that he's being way too loud, Koa snaps back that everyone looks up to Sasha, and Lauren fires off that it's only natural he'd want to be with her. He clenches his fist, eyes blazing with pure determination, and announces that this is the moment he'll fire straight up to Esray. Kua yanks him away, and with pure frustration, orders him to shut up before his heartfelt speech can even finish. Right as the chaos spikes, the maid's voice slices through everything and tells Heis he looks like he's been through hell. Then the 1,000 party whirls around, and Lauren gapes over his shoulder, stunned, asking who Sacred Heis is and how in the world he could be targeting Esrain. He snorted and shoved Heist's retreat aside, then slammed a huge, twisted weapon into view, and Lauren ripped the secret out of it. This was a cursed blade, still chained to its previous owner's soul. Heist shrugged it off, telling him to keep it, but Lauren's smile stretched wide, manic, like he'd already won. Lauren doesn't slow down. She hurls the grotesque, severed monster head forward and blares that it's a rare elven ingredient, while Kua stands there horrified, staring as he shouts that the heist is here. Lawrence's crew freezes in shock and embarrassment when King Barbaros' voice slashes through the noise. He declares that the royal family is straight up confirming that very ingredient is tied to a 30 million gold S-rank quest. The story snaps into a massive grand hall. King Barbaros sits flanked by his kids and top advisors, and he turns to an audience we can't see, wiping away the formalities and going straight for the heart of the matter. Then boom, his audience isn't just anyone. It's the realm's heavy hitters, Chaos, the Judgment Tribe's leader, Mamacha, the S-rank swordswoman called Blood Battle, and Jer Basin, the barbarian tribe's captain. The king finally starts explaining. Fresh investigations reveal that B-rank monsters and up have started multiplying at a terrifying, uncontrollable pace. The whole assembly is happening in the Supreme Hell Floor, a terrifying chamber near the capital that Heist himself already dug into, and his crew, Sasha, Reynolds, and Philip included, is right there watching. In the ranks of the summoned heroes, you've got the Sacred Guild's core crew, Heis, the Beast Tamer, Sasha, and the White Heavenly Knight, plus their ruthless boss, Guildmaster Geist, the King of the Iron Fist. King Barbaros wears a grim face as he names the terrifying phenomenon, the Beast Stampede, and the moment he announces it, every warrior around him freezes in stunned shock, eyes wide with disbelief and worry. This Beast Stampede is pure chaos. When the monsters multiply beyond control, they're forced to break out of their old territory and spread, ripping the land into a deadly wasteland where nothing else can survive. His Majesty kept right on going, laying out the whole disaster in sharp detail, and then dropped the bomb. The storm cannon, something that was only supposed to exist on the 60th floor, had suddenly shown up on the 10th. To slam this crisis shut fast, he gave Guildmaster Geist the green light to handle it, even letting him open the dungeon to the public. At that, his advisor Bonnet bowed hard in acknowledgement. This wasn't some random glitch, it was the warning sign of a bigger disaster. The dungeon's balance had snapped, its territory shrinking fast, and now monsters were bursting out of the lower levels, flooding upward to seize whatever land they could find. The monsters weren't just roaming around, they marched with intent like they knew exactly where to go, and if the guild's math was right, their final stop was the royal capital. When Guildmaster Geist caught that, panic hit him hard. Because he remembered what the capital went through 30 years ago, and the fact that all these beasts were just lining up to repeat it. The danger loomed insanely huge, so big that even a mid-level dungeon couldn't ignore it, because the stampede was packing a sickening 20,000 creatures. By the time the last stampede finally died down, the damage was brutal. 3 towns and 7 whole villages had been wiped clean off the map. His face hardened like the past was pressing down on him, and he finally snapped. This was the 7th stampede, bursting again from the Supreme Hell Floor. Even he never saw it coming, and now all they had left was one thing. Stand shoulder to shoulder. His plea for unity crashed into mixed reactions. Prince Cress snapped his gaze away, annoyed, while Mama Cha let out a frustrated sigh and mumbled that this whole mess was just one big scare, but the king locked in, turning straight to Guildmaster Geist. Then he barked his orders. Geist had to warn every adventure guild and beg neighboring nations for help, while Bonnet was ordered to whip the royal army into motion at full speed, and both of them jumped on their assignments without a second thought. With his orders already thrown down, he shot up and slammed a firm hand on the table. Then he corrected himself. This wasn't just a stampede, it was an unprecedented crisis, and the fate of the entire kingdom. He said it all depended on every single person in that room. His eyes carved through every leader gathered before him, and the resolve on his face looked unshakable, tempered with steady trust. "I'm counting on every one of you," he declared, and his voice boomed with the full force of his power and the hope he refused to let go of. After the royal decree hit, Heist just stood there in tense silence, fresh bandages wrapped up, an eye patch now sealing his left eye, while Sasha stared at him, worry written all over her face. While the other leaders bickered, Burly Jerepson slammed the table and demanded unity. Every clan had to team up and train together for this never-before-seen threat, and Mama Cha backed him with a grin, insisting the promised rewards were just as wild. Sasha didn't hesitate, she slapped down a bolder plan. Forget the defensive slog, smash straight into the dungeon, drop to the very bottom, and take out the final boss to choke the stampede at its source, and the audacity of it left Piazzala completely stunned. Elsewhere, Chaos tried to talk down Heis, demanding to know how he just shot up to S rank. Then he nailed him with the truth. His blessing skill was useless inside the dungeon, and Chaos had a better way for him to use it. But Heis just rose from his seat, gripping a crumpled document like it was his lifeline, and started to walk out, leaving Chaos scrambling to shout after him. With his back to the room, he froze on the threshold, then snapped out, "I'm sorry, but I'm not backing down. I refuse." His refusal lit a firestorm of fury across the other leaders. Jerepson railed against his arrogance, and Piazzala sneered that anyone with an attitude like that was going to get himself killed sooner rather than later. When the word finally hit the throne, King Barbaros snapped into wild laughter, and Princess Muin's face twisted with visible annoyance as the king boldly proclaimed that defiant spirit was exactly the point. Sasha couldn't share that feeling. She just stared after where Heis had vanished, frozen in pure disbelief, mind racing over why he'd throw everything away like that. 10 days crashed by, and all across the kingdom, newspapers screamed the terrifying news. Maps laid out the beast stampede's brutal, unending march. As the crisis crushed everything, the Merchants Guild finally went public, declaring an indefinite stop to every commission and mission. Just like everyone feared, the massive upheaval was set to kick off in just a few days. With danger closing in, King Barbaros strode to the front of his gathered knights, roaring orders from the castle balcony as his words thundered through the air. His words did nothing to stop the panic from spreading. People across the land grabbed whatever they could and fled in a frantic exodus, abandoning their homes. City streets erupted into full-blown chaos, and everyone sprinted for cover, while tough adventurers like Jerobson planted their feet, faces set in stone, staring at the desperate evacuation unfold. As the scene spiraled out, King Barbaros wore a grim mask of exhaustion and grit, while Princess Muin stood beside him, her worry for their people burning wide in her eyes. Elsewhere, Sasha stared straight at the horizon, her face set with raw resolve and sharp worry for the fight that was about to hit. Home, then wham, the beast stampede ignites. While the kingdom held its breath for the coming impact, Heis stayed tucked away in a quiet corner of the city, calmly settling his bill with an old shopkeeper, then pressed the man for answers, demanding to know why he never planned to flee to another town. The shopkeeper leaned in and told us his dream was to run his business right here, and that he'd finally gotten to do it. Then, the moment he stopped talking, a deafening roar crashed outside, rattling the whole building to its core. Then he lifted a framed photo of his family, his wife, grinning son, the whole moment frozen in time, and he said he felt lucky, because right then his wife and kid weren't home. His voice rasped with exhausted defeat as it echoed across the ruined wasteland, warning that when the horde came, it wouldn't leave a single bone for a proper burial. Tears spilled into his eyes as the old man fought for breath, saying his home, his family, and his name were all he had left to lose, and that it was the last scrap of his family's legacy. With a gentle thud, he shut the book on the counter, staring down the cost as he vowed to protect his dream and his son. Heist sank into silence, drinking in every word of that heartfelt declaration, his face completely masked by his dark hair and that fresh, newly snapped eye patch. She spun toward the counter, and the coins started clinking, shattering the silence. He hurriedly told the startled shopkeeper that the payment covered his stay that night and the breakfast waiting for him the next morning. Meanwhile, up on the city's brutal outer wall, the terrifying truth finally hit. Reporters shouted that about 70,000 beasts were closing in fast. Guildmaster guys thundered across the battlements, rallying the defenders to fight for their king and their people, while Sasha stood right beside him, her voice slicing straight through the panic, declaring she was their shield, their sword, and that nothing could break her. Her defiant shout got cut off the second scout blurted the news. His estimate was wrong. The real count was 100,000, and Jays, Sasha, and every defender on that wall were hit by pure, stunned disbelief. With despair sinking into the ramparts, Heist burst out into the empty city streets, long coat snapping in the wind, marching forward like he owned the dark, ready to stare down the impossible tide by himself. As a pack of grotesque, goblin-like horrors barrels toward them, he refuses to flinch, then pops into existence with a massive four-barreled weapon that blazes with raw light, sights locked on, just as one of the monsters shrieks, "We're here." He fires, blasting 3 hulking projectiles like missiles through the air, and the moment they slam down, they erupt into savage detonations, swallowing the front lines of the horde in a wall of fire as he starts calling in his next weapon. With a roar that shakes his bones, the missile launcher disappears, swapped instantly for a hulking, multi-barreled rotary cannon. Raw power surges through him as he braces and prepares to fire again. He unleashes a brutal blast of fire, cannons roaring as they spit hot projectiles that rip straight through the monsters' ranks, shredding them into chaos while their screams get swallowed by the weapon's deafening roar. Reynolds squints for distance, then blurts out how unreal the sight is, while Sasha beside him gapes in shock, wondering if this crushing power is actually the Heist's blessing. Far away, a commander barks orders, and the archers unleash a volley that swallows the sky in arrows. Right in front of Sasha, a horned demon crane materializes and cackles like it's lost its mind. Then it snarls that she's a bitch and declares her party is going to be dragged into the bloody celebration it's already cooking up. Then his focus snaps right back to the Heists and the brutal assault, while a crane keeps squinting, baffled and intrigued, trying to figure out what weapon could make a spectacle like this, and realizing the whole battle has turned into a one-man show. He glares at the distant warrior, contempt blazing in his eyes, and snarls a curse under his breath about that brat. Reynolds takes the reins, barking orders for the vanguard to surge ahead, telling them he's betting everything on Sasha, Robin, the armored warrior, and Philip as they gear up to crash into the chaos. Robin charges in with a ferocious roar, swings that massive weapon in a brutal arc, and smashes a goblin into a bloody, pulpy mess on the ground. She clenches her teeth, powers up her non-gigantification ability, and tells her comrades to hang in there. The moment hits and then boom, an enormous, one-eyed beast bellows as she surges straight into the chaos, cutting the air with a lightning-fast arc of steel against that unstoppable monster swarm. Elsewhere on the battlefield, Jarbison slams his weapon into the ground and unleashes an earthquake that rattles the earth, while Reynolds stays cool, flicks on his poison power, and smirks that the writhing creatures look downright disgusting. His moment of observation gets obliterated by a brutal impact that splits the earth, and when the dust finally clears, the demon Crane stands right there, demanding to know exactly who he is. Reynolds is frozen in shock, just staring, as Crane clocks how fast he managed to retrieve. He flashes a smirk, clocking Reynolds as the guy from Sasha's reports. Then the demon leans in and demands, straight up, whether Reynolds knows Sasha. Crane didn't wait for an answer. He demanded what he wanted, then slammed his plan down to erase him, and even called Reynolds and Iser to mock him as trash for forgetting Sasha is his superior officer. That insult hits like lightning to the nerve, and with a furious roar, Reynolds rockets forward, his sword flashing straight at the demon. The demon suddenly disappears. Bam. Crane is right behind him, untouched, while an explosion blasts the forest way back behind them, and Sasha screams for Reynolds to get ready because the demon just popped up. Sasha's warning gets swallowed the moment a brutal new threat crashes in. An entire horde of monsters surges over the ridge like a living tidal wave of snarling teeth, and Sasha's eyes blow wide as the truth hits that they're in real trouble, while Reynolds bellows for everyone to look. The ground shudders and rips open, and then boom. Colossal armored monster like a living mountain of jagged rock erupts from the earth, roaring hard enough to rattle your bones, and when Reynolds lays eyes on the beast, he panics and screams Sasha's name. He watched the colossal rock monster, an earth-born beast of pure rage, slam its power into the ground and shatter it right in front of him. The beast tore the sky open with a deafening roar, the sound crashing across the battlefield, and when Reynolds saw the chaos swallowing everything, goblins swarming everywhere, panic ripped through him as he shouted Sasha's name. When Sasha heard his cry, she snapped her head toward him, jaw set, and told him to back off. This giant creature was her problem, and he'd keep the heist duties with her. She promised everything would be fine, then spun on her heel and charged toward the goblins, screaming for a retreat as she lined up to fight. Far off, the demon Crane just watched it all play out, grinning like it already knew how this would end. His grin vanished the instant a figure popped into existence in front of him, Heis. Crane froze, blinking like he couldn't believe Heis had been asleep. Then boom, small cylindrical projectiles started raining down, smashing into him before he could even react. The demon laughed and mocked him, saying his projection technique was as ordinary as water in the outside world. He jerked out of the way again and again as deadly projectiles tore past like lightning, and from his floating perch, Crane smirked down at him, clocking the reflexes of the heist crew, then snapped his fingers and unleashed the next attack. The projectiles erupted in a thunderous blast, swallowing the whole area in fire and smoke. Then everything cleared, and the heist walked out unscathed. Crane couldn't help but mutter about the sheer brutality of that magic until the demon stared him down and declared, right there, that Crane was his real opponent. Fresh in a ruthless suit of dark armor, he shot forward with impossible speed, slipping through wave after wave of magic. Crane couldn't hide his shock at the raw power, but he still wondered, could Heis actually land a blow? Then Heis struck, booting up a cloud of dust, and the demon swooped from above again, pressing him with one brutal question, "What's your next move?" He realized he'd die if he didn't move fast enough, then it clicked. If he could break the projectile's flow, the whole attack would stop. The next wave slammed in, and with a calm hand on the ground, he shattered every incoming shot into harmless bursts of light. Just when Sasha's breath seemed like it might fail, her voice snapped in from behind him. She slid a steadying hand onto his shoulder and told him to stay strong, that she was right there, then urged them to launch their attack again together. Her words snapped the tension clean in half, then a grin lit up his face as his gauntlet flared, power surging into his hand for the coordinated strike. He raises a huge double-barreled gun straight at the demon, eyes bulging with disbelief, and snaps, "How is this even possible? What kind of trick lets Heist pull off power like that when my magic is still running?" He yanks the trigger, and Sasha right beside him whips her hands through a blazing whirl of energy that snaps into the weapon's blast. Then together they unleash a colossal, spiraling vortex of power, and it swallows Crane whole. The demon screams in raw shock and humiliation, unable to stomach how his own brutal magic snapped back and crushed him. Then, as the blast's energy fades, his body starts to waver. A heavy, death-like silence crashes over the wreckage, shattered earth, scattered debris, and only Heis and Sasha standing there, alone in a sea of ruin. The calm gets shattered by a bright, cheery voice. Piazzala pops right into view, smiling like nothing can bother her. She gives Heis a grateful nod for the help, then playfully suggests that afternoon tea would be the perfect reward. Before he can answer, his face flips into total shock. His head snaps around as he blares, "Sasha," and that raw panic jolts Piazzala on the spot. His cry was for her, while across the chaos, Sasha staggered, breathing hard, her face smeared with blood and grime, as the colossal rock monster's massive stone body shattered, cracked apart, and crumbled into dust, finally crushed beyond return. Blood-curdling alert screams across the battlefield, calling every soldier and adventurer. A monster straight out of nightmares is here, the SS plus Demon Emperor, a demon beast carved from living rock. The moment the order drops, it unleashes a gut-tripping roar, and every warrior locks in, fighting with every last ounce of strength. Sasha lunges into the nightmare right on time. She rockets high into the air and slams her sword down on the monster's head with everything she's got, but it only blasts back in a deafening clang, leaving not a single scratch on that rocky hide as the shockwave rips outward and Piazzala screams a warning. She gets slammed backward by the recoil, frustration flashing across her face as she realizes the creature's shell can't be pierced. She stumbles through the air, scrambling to land, while Reynolds yells her name, his voice roaring with panic and concern. The second her guard drops, something moves in and steals the opening, because the Demon Emperor's arrival has turned the whole area into chaos, and from the dark woods, goblins flood the battlefield, trapping her with nowhere to run. Sasha's suddenly boxed in, and when one creature lunges at her, her scream rips out before she can stop it. When he watches her tumble into danger, Rental tears through the goblins with desperation blazing in his chest, cursing the foul monsters as he hacks a path toward her. But it's too late, because Sasha already crumples to her knees, utterly drained and buried under the monster tide. He yells her name again as the goblin barrels in on her helpless form, and just as its claws are about to rip down, the goblin's head suddenly bursts open in a black gore spray, cut apart by an invisible power. That tiny moment of peace evaporates the instant the Colossus Demon Emperor starts choking up a blinding light in its gaping maw. Reynolds grips a glowing magical item and instantly knows he's in lethal territory. He lunges to shout for Sasha to run, but he's too far away, trapped in his own fight, and deep down he understands he won't reach her in time. With a thunderous roar, the monster blasts out a tidal wave of destruction. Its beam carves the ground and turns everything to ash, right down the line. Reynolds can do nothing but shriek Sasha's name as the shockwave swallows where she stands. And as death barrels toward her, Sasha finally realizes, this is it, her end is here. From a swirl of smoke and dust, a battered figure steps out and plants himself over Sasha's fallen body, Heis, but twisted by the fight, bruised and shaken, wearing a dark flowing coat and an eye patch over his right eye. Sasha stares up, stunned, and whispers his name like she can't believe it's real. He goes stone silent with his back to her, standing like a wall to block the ruin he just barely stopped. The world around them is scorched ground and busted rock, proof of how strong that blast really was. Sasha can only freeze and stare at the savior she never saw coming. He pulled Sasha into his arms as she slumped against him, her voice shaking with relief and fury. She sobbed, demanding to know why he'd laid down his life for her, insisting she never once asked him to protect her. Panting and battered, he just shot back, pure instinct. Pinned to the ground in pain, Reynolds stared up at them, and suddenly clarity burned in his eyes. He finally got it. Their bond and their dream weren't shifting at all. They were always chasing the same thing, becoming true, ruthless adventurers. Sasha's eyes warmed as she looked at Heis, her expression turning gentle. He kept talking, admitting she still had a long road ahead, but he knew her heart was set on nothing but the best for him, because it was her, he said, who was pushing him to keep moving forward. Then his focus snapped to the massive monster looming on the horizon, and he barked at Sasha to leave the giant turtle to him as the creature growled with an ominous rumble. A memory ripped through Sasha's mind, back when she was still young, shaking so badly she couldn't bring herself to kill even one quivering slime, and there was Heis pushing her hard like, just do it, just slash the. His encouraging smile, his promise that she could do it, suddenly blasted through her mind, and the shock of his past faith clashing with his desperate plea for her to run lit a fierce fire in her chest. She clenched her fist, thanked him, and swore she would fight. With a blinding burst of light and shadow, Sasha slashed her sword, and a roaring wave of energy detonated, erasing the goblin horde to nothing. Reynolds froze, eyes wide, stunned into silence, begging the question. Where did that insane power even come from? Her golden sword pulsed with blazing light, and Sasha remembered Jer Basin's words about awakening, about true time, where your buried power finally snaps into place. He'd seen it all. Her strength was being chained. So with fresh fire in her eyes, Sasha declared that Hybulk was protected now. Rage surged from the display as the colossal monster blasted out a deafening roar, slammed its massive head into the earth, unleashed a heavenly Fang attack, and tore the ground apart with a thunderous boom. That devastating force crashed in, and Sasha answered with a defiant roar. Power surging through her, she launched forward, shouting that she'd be the unbreakable shield and the indomitable blade. Her thunderous cry tore across the battlefield, slicing straight through the thick fog of Heist unconsciousness. The sudden sound jerked him awake, eyes snapping open. Then he saw he was lying in a bed with his face wrapped in bandages, dazedly wondering if he'd been dropped in an inn, until a woman's voice cut in and told him flat out. Yep, he was awake. He snapped his head around, and there was Priscilla, beaming as she said good morning. He barely managed to whisper her name and ask how she'd ended up here, and she told him the battle was already over and she'd handled the first aid, smiling like her spiritual power was more than enough. His first worry wasn't about himself at all. He hauled himself up, snapped, "What happened to Sasha?" The second Piazzala burst into the room. His question landed, and an icy, heavy silence slammed down as the two elves traded a nervous look. Persia snapped the silence, blurted out an excuse about water, and stormed out with Piazzala, leaving Heis alone to face his fear growing by the second. Seconds later, Piazzala's voice ripped through the window. She demanded to know how bad his injuries were, insisting they must hurt, but didn't look life-threatening. All he could do was give a shaky, quiet yes. Her voice then dropped into something heavy as she offered a real, heartfelt apology. She blurted out that Sasha stepped into the fight by her own choice. No one grabbed her, no one forced her, and as she talked, Sasha's awakened form flashed in Heis mind. Piazzala waved off the apology, but her words died in her throat, like even she couldn't say what the battle really became. He forced out a shaky smile at Pricea, finally telling her he'd reached the awakening stage. Then he blurted, almost like he needed to hear it, if that meant he wasn't a burden anymore. But Pricea wouldn't look at him. Her face stayed grim as she only spoke his name. Her head shot up and her eyes begged for answers. Then she stared him straight in the face, admitting she knew how heavy her request was, and asking if he'd really come back to the sacred party one more time. Right as he tried to answer, Piazzala ripped the door wide open, and her voice thundered through the room. She snapped that Heis was hers and ordered him to stay, leaving Pricea frozen in shock. A sudden clash left Heis totally stunned, and before he could even process it, Priscilla snapped back, insisting Heis was part of her sacred party, only for Piazzala to hit her with a sharp, crackling stare. He stood there, wrestling with what was even happening, because he'd always run solo, so when their argument turned possessive, it just went right over his head. The fight flared up fast. Piazzala strutted in, smugly pressing Pricea and grilling her about her bond with Heis, and her confidence never even wavered. Then she straight up declared that she and Heis would be companions for life, crushing Pricia's patience as frustration showed on her face. A brutal, booming crash from outside sliced right through their arguing. While Heis was still stuck in bed, he snapped his head toward the noise, mind racing as he tried to figure out what the heck was making that kind of racket. He shoved himself upright, strode to the window, and leaned in to see what was out there. Then, all at once, he couldn't help thinking maybe things weren't as awful as they felt right now. The racket suddenly made sense. Pricea and Piazzala were down below, shouting up at Heis, demanding he pick them or Sasha. Sick of it, Heis snapped back that he'd already told them he was a solo player. 6 months later, the city finally found its groove again, streets roaring back to life with fresh energy and non-stop bustle. At the sacred Guild Hall, Sasha leans in and greets a brand new party, and there, it's Thousand. They stare up at her, their leader fumbling over the words as he blurts that they've finally arrived, while Sasha immediately sweeps in with a quick apology for all the trouble. She slams a brand new quest poster onto the table, C-rank on paper, but the job is to wipe out an Orge Lord. The spiky-haired leader in their party jolts with pure shock. Sasha tells them that Thousands become a C-rank party, so she's ready to step into something way tougher. Then she asks, "Can you handle it?" Lauren's jaw tightens, his fist clenches, and he swears they can, begging her to trust him. That confidence didn't last. Seconds later, in a clearing, the party got crushed fast, surrounded by 3 hulking orcs at once, and Lauren just stood there, panting, realizing they were in deep trouble. His party is torn apart, injured and scattered to the wind. He clenches his teeth and forces himself to fight, knowing he has no choice. But when that gigantic orange monster barrels in, dread slams through him as he realizes, "This is it." Right in that desperate second, a raging wave of dark power explodes forward, vaporizing the charging monster and its crew in an instant. As the storm of energy whirls and the remains fade, Heis doesn't even flinch. Lauren's mouth falls open in pure shock as she blurts out his name. He whirls back to the bruised adventurers, checks on everyone's safety, and locks eyes with Sasha. Then the crew of Thousands surges toward him, sobbing with pure relief as they crowd him, thanking him over and over for saving their lives. Relief hits them all at once, and then one of the party stares at the fallen orcs, whispering in pure awe that Heist just wiped out 3 in an instant, so there's no doubt he must be S-Ray. This hits Lauren like a match to kindling. Suddenly she blurts out the rumor that Heis is the strongest in the world because he's S-Rank, then fires off a question. Would Heis actually explain where that power comes from? And her teammates can't resist echoing it, dying to know too. He calmly declares his ultimate dream, to conquer the 6 supreme dungeons, and the whole 1,000 party just freezes, stunned out of their minds, repeating that legendary name like they can't believe it's real. People across the world whisper about these 6 locations, dungeons so brutal they barely belong in reality, like Pylaramen's Great Salt Lake, where Delmadrome's savage ecosystem swarms with danger, the Earth Dragon's maze-like labyrinth, and a ruined cityscape stretched across the horizon. And then there are the other legendary stops, the disorienting Forest of Confusion, the Tower of the 7 Sages, Grenobstar, which showed up just once in recorded history, plus the demon-haunted mountains of Necrophantasia, and the mythical Garden of God, a place people only whisper about in pure legend. He tells the party that out of all these spots, only 2 have ever been found, the Great Salt Lake in the Frizz region and a dungeon hidden in the Dazia Desert, and then drops a brutal warning. Nobody who steps into either one ever comes back. With no official okay from any high command, he can't help but wonder which nightmare he should charge first. As he talks, the members of Thousand Gaze stare at him with wide-eyed awe, and he realizes he can't spill that he's working on a commission. So for now, he decides to just act like he's another adventurer tagging along. His ambition lights a spark in everyone, and Lauren and Tenna can't help themselves. They rush to ask if they can tag along, apologizing they might slow him down, but craving every last detail of his stories, while the whole crew begs to ride with him on the road. Right as he goes to speak, everything snaps to a massive throne room, huge doors thunder open, and King Barbaros steps in to greet Heis. Heis drops to one knee, blurted apologies spilling out as he admits he's been late, while the 1,000-person party huddles nearby at a banquet table, staring in total confusion. Barbaros cuts through it all at once, brushing off the greetings and driving straight to the point. Then the king slams down a royal decree. He's ordering Heis to seize one of the 6 supreme dungeons, starting with Delmadrome in the Desire region, and that command hits so hard it leaves Heist frozen for a beat. His mind races as the truth hits. Now he has to dive into another one of the supreme dungeons this soon. Seeing the king's hesitation, he cuts in with his plan. Heist crushed it during the recent stampede, and that performance tells him Heist can absolutely go toe-to-toe with Delmadrome. He stood before King Barbaros, who leaned in and fired the question straight at him. Would he accept this challenge? Without thinking twice, he dropped to one knee, slamming his armored fist into the floor, ready to follow that command with a. Once the command was approved, the king snapped his attention to a giant carved stone tablet and ordered Heist to hunt down the Desire Adventurers Guild for exact dungeon details, because Balgun, yes, that man surely knows the whole story. The king kept talking, saying he'd already readied a letter of introduction and was praying for a good report. Then Bonnet strode up to deliver it. Heis took the letter and promised he understood. With the deal sealed, Heist spun out of the throne room, and the heavy portcullis gate slammed shut behind him, locking in his new mission. Right when he stepped out, Piazzala and Sasha were waiting for him. Piazzala popped in with a bright flourish, grinning as she said she'd heard he was heading to Desire to hunt a legendary dungeon, and Sasha just stared him down like, "Yep, that's totally you." Oh. He strode past them and barked, "Don't follow me this time," because he knew that place was lethal, and he was dead set on going in alone. She called out to him, waving off his panic, and with a bold grin, Piazzala promised she wouldn't be letting it take her along. She stepped up and slipped her hand into his arm, then warned him she'd just climbed to her new rank, but right now her power would only slow him down. With a hard, steady gaze, she told him to go on ahead. With a sharp flick of his arm, Piazzala dropped the next bombshell. He'd just learned that Sasha's party was gearing up to take on a supreme dungeon, Pylaramen's. Right as Heist slips out through the city gates, Piazzala shouts his name. Wham, he freezes mid-step, and when he whirls back, she's offering her thanks. He looks totally stunned by her gratitude, and she lights up with a bright smile, urging him to spill every detail about his journey when he gets back. After a beat of shock, he gives a quiet nod. Her face relaxes the moment she says, "Come on, tell me your stories while we sit together and sip tea." With farewells thrown back like sparks, the 2 adventurers step out together and kick off their journey, praying for a safe road ahead. Their journey finally slams them into the roaring desert kingdom of Pizia, a city pressed right up against a brutal mountain range, and they waste no time, rushing straight to the local Adventurers Guild. Inside, Piazzala hands the guild official a letter of introduction from the King of Hybelk, then declares they've come to meet Balgun and ask him to confirm the letter is real. As she tackles the formalities, Heist seethes and clenches his gauntleted fist, staring down at the letter, reliving that beast ride chaos and all the weapons he snagged since, certain that if everything runs smooth, fear has no chance to bite. Before Heist can even finish his thought, a giant, bearded shadow crashes over him. This massive man towers in front of his face and roars, asking if Heis is the one trying to conquer Delmadrome. Heis jerks his eyes up, startled, and blurts if he's bald gone. The man answers that yes, that's him. Heis says the king hired him to crack the dungeon, and he needs intel, so Balgun snaps back on the spot, roaring that Heis has no place near him and to get lost, then rages at why he'd ever listen to a brat or even let him set foot in his place. Balgun keeps railing on, spitting contempt at the thought that King Barbaros would toss an S-rank appraiser, one tied to the beast riot, into Delmadrome, and the fury in his voice keeps climbing until Piazzala steps up with that calm, placid smile and tells him, straight-faced, to get himself under control. Her diplomacy got obliterated the moment a Heist struck, and a burst of mocking laughter drowned the room. He sneered at the legendary title of the four great clans, scoffing at the idea of music itself. Then he shot the big man a straight look and ordered him to listen up, teeth bared in a sharp grin, as he painted Hisicus Balgana as nothing but a frightened old man cowering from some unknown enemy, and that hit Piazzala like a brick wall. The young adventurer doubled down on his verbal barrage, spitting out that Balgun and everyone like him were nothing but pathetic cowards. With his rant finally over, he yanked the dark visor down over his eyes, then spun away from the raging man and told the shopkeeper, cool as ice, to do what he just said and go home. As Piazzala walked away, despair crashed across his face. She finally realized that a peaceful ending was completely gone. Before she could even blink, Bal roared, shouting that Heis was just a little brat. Then Heis exploded into action, springing off the balcony, and a massive blast tore through the building behind him as he crashed down. With a grunt, the Heist twist tore through the air, just barely as he juked aside, and a crushing blow detonated the stone at his feet. The big bearded man, ball already lost, just stared with a smug grin, clearly stunned. The boy still dodged it. He won't let the boy breathe. He yanks his massive weapon up high. Now dodge this, he snarls. The ball blasts forward, roaring as the hammer crashes down with brutal force. The weapon slams in and the ground explodes upward. The Heist kid vaults over Balgun's head, riding the impact's momentum straight into position. Down below, Balgun flashes a grin, impressed as hell by the boy's serious skill. He lands a short distance away, then whips his head back to stare at the sheer wreckage, sweat dripping down his temple, because that old man's strength is way beyond what he expected. The shockwave keeps blasting outward, smashing up dust and rock into the air around the two fighters as chaos thickens in every direction. While gone, his eyes go wide as the weapon Heist suddenly erupts out of nowhere, and the grin on the Heister's face dares him to say he'll stop it. The firearm flashes, then a rapid volley of shots rips through the air. To his shock, the bullets clanged off Balgun's gauntlets like they hit steel. The blacksmith didn't even flinch, and that's when Heistairs realized it. His strike was useless, because a tiny sphere slipped out of Balgun's hand, dropping to the floor. His opponent erupts in a booming laugh, gotcha, and he can't stop grinning, thrilled by what's happening. He calls it wild to see someone wielding a Navanaga weapon, and the name hangs there like a mystery, brand new to him and to the whole Heist. That word hits him like a flashbang. Suddenly he's staring at Ibis, her long hair whipping in the air as she turns back to him with wide-eyed curiosity, asking right to his face if he's her lover. A heavy pat on the back snapped him back to reality as the ball was gone, and the blacksmith leaned in with a huge grin. All right, so you've heard of Nabinaga, huh? He asked, clocking that the boy clearly knew at least a bit. He slammed his palm on Heis' shoulder with a loud thud, then burst into a hearty laugh when it finally hit. He remembered the young man's name. Heis could only stand there, stunned, as the blacksmith swore it was true. Heis, right. With the names locked in, he spun around and motioned for Heis to come after him. Then he promised a story, beckoning him to pull up a seat. As he strode along, the young man's face twisted with sudden anger, and he couldn't stop thinking, why did that blacksmith hit him so hard? Right as his mind was racing, they burst into what looked like a guild hall, and the blacksmith snapped his hand toward the table, telling him again to sit down. Moments later, a thick, heavy splash echoed as it poured into wooden mugs, shaking the room with every slosh. Balgun slid a mug in front of Heis and kicked off a tale, claiming he'd once run with Nabinaga's party, and the moment he said it, the young man's face went wide with shock. Then Balgun kept talking, revealing their crew also had Ibis, the elven knight, and the rest of the clan masters. He told me that at the very start, they were all one big squad, locked together, fighting under the exact same banner. He chuckled at the memory, remembering how Ibis, back when she didn't even have that fierce authority yet, used to shadow Nabinaga everywhere, trailing after him like a joyful little spark in adventurer's gear. His laughter died down, and a heavy, grim look slid onto his face. Then he made it crystal clear. Nabai Naga wasn't just some leader, he was a real friend and a brother-in-arms. With that, he locks his gaze on Heist, voice tight and low, then demands why someone like Heist would spit such hate at a stranger using a weapon identical to the one his beloved friend carried. He stares wide-eyed as Balgun blurts out that this isn't personal, then points to a massive reinforced bucket like that's the real reason he stepped in. Balgun leans in and reveals a huge, pale monster hide, exactly what he got the moment he stepped into this place, and then he bears his past, a dungeon unlike anything outside, where every one of his comrades was slaughtered, leaving scars that won't ever fade. With a grim memory finally exposed, bald, gone and all, plots the heist and declares what he intends to do. The young man stays silent, but his face hardens like stone. He doesn't even wait for an answer, he just says it's been ages, and then he drops the bomb. 2 more young fighters have already climbed to the top, and Ibis, refusing to be left behind after taking on the beast Stampede, is now charging headfirst into another legendary dungeon. That reminder of his rivals lights a blazing fire in Heis, and he declares with zero doubt, "I'm going," as he vows to rise as the strongest of them all. His bold declaration hits the air, and Balgun bursts out laughing, calling him a fool for ignoring every warning. The laughter dies down, and Balgun's grin vanishes into steel. He reads the boy's resolve and nods, deciding to back him up by sharing everything he knows about the Delmadrome dungeon. He ushers the boy inside and tells him, from the outside, the Delmadrome might look like plain old ruins, but its monsters are brutal, and their sweet, harmless look is just a trap. Then he snaps the warning. If you walk in thinking it's a normal dungeon, you'll get crushed by your own wrong assumptions. Right after that, he pulls out and unfurls a huge scroll. Unrolling the scroll pulls up a crisp, detailed map, and Balgun leans in hard to warn them. Even if Heist slips inside, he better realize this dungeon plays by totally different rules, packed with bizarre contraptions called iron boxes. The boy leans in and asks if those map drawings are the iron boxes. Balgun nods and reveals the key detail, saying that when he showed Nabai Naga, his old comrades swore they looked just like the devices back in his own world. He drank in the craftsman's words, and his mind instantly flashed to those eerie iron boxes, modern guns and vehicles, so close to the weapons he'd already summoned, like they were cousins. The why behind them in the dungeon still didn't add up, but he knew there had to be a bigger link waiting to be uncovered. Then he snapped his focus back to Balgun and demanded to know, was Nabanaga just as totally blind to what was going on? Balgun swore his partner was just as clueless too. With that, Balgun said he'd spilled everything he knew. Then Heis' gaze slammed into his weapon master, Grimoire, and in that moment, he knew if he could conquer this dungeon and the next big trials too, he'd unlock more of his buried power, and maybe finally uncover the truth behind the world's strange artifacts. While Balgun stewed over the heist, his hand snapped into a fist, knuckles white. The craftsman blurted it out with shame. Fresh intel had shattered the plan, and now he couldn't stop thinking that his fallen comrades' lives had been thrown away, and Heist just stood there, stunned by the surge of raw fury. He stared at the map, and the truth hit like a punch. The past of Balgun wasn't just history, it was a gamble made for survival. That man had been shoved into risking everything just to crawl away with his life. And Heist swore right then, the sacrifice of Balgun's comrades would never be for nothing. A whole new light snapped on in his head, and he marched straight up to the craftsman. "Balgun," he said, swallowing his pride. Then he apologized for calling him a coward and admitted he'd been immature. Balgun just stared back, completely stunned by how fast the apology hit. The big guy shot out a rough little grunt, like that was all the acknowledgement he'd ever give. Then he told Heis to drop it, saying at least the kid hadn't tried to play the seasoned veteran from day one, and with a step back, Heis fired off a sincere, heartfelt thank you. He spun to leave, and Heist shot a confident grin back, promising he'd conquer that massive dungeon, until Balgun's voice cut through the air and ordered, "Wait." Right before he could even answer, the heavy workshop door blasted open, and a visitor's voice boomed that they'd arrived. The moment Heis and Balgun's talk got interrupted by a loud door slam, Heis snapped around, his face tightening as the sudden visitor walked in. He didn't even get a full look, just a blur streaking past him like lightning, and whoever it was vanished deeper into the workshop. The newcomer halts right in front of all gone, and the massive craftsman lifts his eyes from the workbench, calm as ever. "Ah, you're here," he asks, while the others hang back, staring hard like they're trying to decode the chaos in front of them. Hands on her hips, she stands tall with those pointed ears and a spark in her eyes, asking if this is the final S-rank adventure, and then quizzing Hijiri. Right from behind, Heis snaps, "So who are you?" She just flashes a cheerful grin and answers, "That's right." She whips around out of nowhere, snaps into Heis's personal space at lightning speed, leans in so close she practically breathes down his neck, and barks, "You're Heis, aren't you?" She circles him, eyes raking over every inch like a spotlight, then pauses. You're stronger than I thought," she admits, sounding stiff and strained as she struggles to make sense of the mess. Balgun smashes into the tense moment, raising a letter like a warning flare, and tells Heist that Barbaros said another S-rank job is coming for their expedition. Heist just stares, stunned, and blurts out why nobody told him about it. The truth finally hits and Heist's face twists in full shock. "So THATS what this is about," he bursts out yelling. Right next to him, Hijiri just smirks with his eyes closed, flashing a slick peace sign. He whips around toward Balgun, panicking and blurting that he's got nothing to do with any partner. Yet Balgun stays cool and tells him straight, this mission is exactly what he was assigned, and they're a pair, no debate. Sweat dripped as he snapped. Heist glances back at the girl, wondering if they really expect him to play along. Then Hijiri shot him a glare and snapped that she can't team up with someone whose past is a locked box, so all Heist could do was choke out a strained apology. Doubt still gnaws at her, but the energetic elf jabs her adventurer's card forward, flashing that rank for all to see, and she declares, loud and certain, that she truly is a real adventurer. Her proof hits him like a brick. He just freezes, mind scrambling as he spits out, S-rank, in pure disbelief. Right next to him, Balgun shrugs and flat out tells him to swallow the truth. He shoots his gaze up as the elf beams and stretches out her hand, then says she's Hijiri again. At last, Heis steps forward and gives his own formal introduction in return. Spirited young Hijiri grins at Heis and practically begs him to take care of her, then leans in close and brags like, "You know my reputation, right?" She challenges him, asking if he's heard of the famous Hijiri cursed fist in the Yulong tongue, while the heavily bearded Balgun watches them from nearby. Rage tightens in his face as he bluntly tells her that Zai and Oolong are both doomed to die, shattering Hijiri into stunned silence, and then he demands where Oolong is, remembering it as a brutal western land of relentless war and martial arts. She snaps back into confidence, thrusts her chest out like a banner, and proudly calls Oolong her true home, then brushes off his grim warning, tells him they'll make things right after they clear the dungeon together, and steps in so close that he stumbles back in alarm. He jerks back, rattled, firing off questions like, "How is that even possible?" and shouting that they'll beat it together. But Hijiri just looks stuck, bewildered by how fiercely he's shutting the idea down. Meanwhile, inside the royal court, King Barbaros drops a bombshell. He declares he's stepping out himself and joining the adventurer Heist for the conquest of the great Delmadrome dungeon. When the courtier starts to doubt, the king snaps for a clear answer, then asks if this is the same Heist tied to the infamous bee stampede. The moment the name hits, Hijiri freezes and her eyes blow wide with instant recognition. She whips around to face the king and bows deep, formally begging to join Heist's expedition, because she points out that the chaos left by those high-level adventurers has been wrecking the war effort, and this is their shot to fix it. Shouts erupt in protest as they realize she can blow everything up, but it's already too late. Hijiri bolts off, shouting that she'll obey the royal command, and he's counting on him to keep. With nowhere to run, he stares straight into King Barbaros's face. The king leans in, eyes sharp, and in a low voice he demands, "Does Heis ever get it wrong when he judges people? There's no way to wriggle out of it." A heavy palm slams onto his shoulder. Then the king's voice crashes in, saying it looks like Heis has finally caught his eye, and the king starts to spell out his plan again, trapping the young adventurer on the edge of panic. Right away, Hijiri barrels in and slams a flag on the little mound like she owns the place, declaring she'll become the strongest by beating every heavy hitter inside the great dungeon. And then she throws down a no-backout duel. Her eyes flare with a near-crazy intensity as she corners him, demanding to know if he's really as strong as she thinks he is, and his face stays cold, grim, and impossible to read. He turns his back on her and shuts the challenge down cold, then reminds her, loud and clear, that he's already said he works alone, so there's nothing left to argue about. As he turns to leave, the big bearded gatekeeper waves him off with a warm thanks for stopping by, but before he can go, Hijiri yells from behind, demanding he wait. The gatekeeper stares as the two of them slip out, quietly praying they make it there safe. Later, inside a loud, crowded tavern, Heis slid up to the waitress and demanded a huge order, 2 drinks, a monster steak, and a wild boar pasta dish packed with squid ink and a sharp sour sauce. The waitress scribbles down his demands as he adds crispy fried fish to the pile, and then he whips around to Hijiri, who trailed him to the table, and snaps, dripping with annoyance, asking how long she plans to keep shadowing him. She answers instantly, telling him she'll stick by his side until they smash the great dungeon together, and when he finally caves and agrees to fight her, she's won again. He glances aside, clocking it now. Her contest talk was just a mask to dodge the truth. Her resolve sparks brighter as she grins and declares she's not letting him go, We'll take the dungeon together, she says, and then we'll finally settle our duel. She lights up like she just solved everything, calling it a brilliant move, and Heist faceplants into his chair, crushed by her nonstop drive. Right then, a waitress rushes back to the table, apologizing for the wait. Before them, a feast sprawled across the table, steam rolling off a massive centerpiece, flooding the air with mouthwatering smells. Hijiri practically squealed with joy, swearing everything looked absolutely delicious. Without wasting a second, she yanked a heavy wooden mug into her hands, splashed ale everywhere as a huge grin lit up her face, and she raised it high to toast the birth of their new party, shouting their Heist name at the top of her lungs. Her loud, happy cheer got shut down with a dry, bored sip from Heis. He didn't even blink, looking completely unimpressed as he dragged out a tired, "Oh," that basically challenged her claim. He dropped his mug and said, plain as day, he didn't remember any party being set up at all, yet Hijiri didn't flinch. She just kept nudging him to at least grab a drink with her. She ignored his protest completely, grabbed her food, and took a big bite, then hummed like it was pure magic, practically buzzing with excitement for what came next. Her mind snapped back to the mission, the Delmadrome Great Dungeon. She said it was the top-ranked S-class dungeon, and its terrifying reputation loomed over the barren, empty world like a warning you couldn't ignore. At the word dungeon rank, the Heist leader's face went stone cold, and he shot back with a ruthless certainty, S-class or not, death was already waiting there, ready to take anyone in seconds. Hijiri nodded, locking in that she'd heard every warning, and said, "Look, I've run S-class adventures myself. I know exactly how deadly this can get." Her bright smile snapped away, and a fierce resolve took over, eyes blazing with focus as she swore she'd have to get mentally ready for what came next. She leaned in, her voice slipping low, but the intensity never vanished, because she wasn't dying here, not today. She told the terrified Heist that she couldn't drop until she'd beaten him. She yanks his collar tighter, grinning through a storm of fear, and steels herself. She blasts out that she already told him her plan. She'll crush everyone, power up, and one day crown herself the most powerful person in the world. Heis is left frozen, mouth hanging open, stammering the only thing he can ask, why in the world is she so obsessed with this path? Her words slammed straight into his past, the days when his power couldn't be denied. During the Beast Riot, his legend took over Oolong. He wiped out 1,000 demons, then went even further and erased the entire demon race. Even after all those insane wins, one quiet thought hits him. Somehow, the weight of that power feels way lighter than it should. Back in the tavern, he sinks into deep thought while Hijiri takes a long gulp from her mug and grumbles that he won't even entertain the idea of a competition. He's stuck on his old belief. Every adventurer carries the same drive, to claw their way to become the strongest of them all. She drops her gaze, and you can see the tiredness in her eyes. Then she admits, under her breath, that these competitions are nothing but a hassle. Her sudden confession slams into him like a wave, and he freezes, then locks eyes with her, blurting out what she means, and pushing hard to know her real goal as an adventurer. The question slams open a vault of memories. He remembers how badly he wanted to form a party with Sasha, and how that dream finally came true. But once their group swelled, the gap between their strengths kept widening. Then, like a punch to the gut, he relives the moment Sasha screamed at him, saying he was pulling everyone down. He clings to that old moment when she smiled and pushed him to carve his own strength into his heart, to become the strongest. But then he sees her turn her back and walk away, leaving him stranded, and the shock hits him so hard he visibly shakes. Hijiri cuts through his chaos, leaning in like she's dying to hear the truth. She says any reason will do, but she's burning with curiosity and begs him to spill at least a little of his story. Her simple request, but it hits like a truck. Tears flood her cheeks as she gasps for water, wrecked by emotion over a story he hasn't even finished telling, while the Heist just stands there, stunned and completely lost. He shuts down the heavy conversation for now, like the mood just vanished into thin air. Instead, they push into a loud town square, where the air crackles with merchants yelling and crowds dart between market stalls. While the streets buzz around them, Heis clocks it. This has to be the road toward the Delmadrome dungeon, nothing like a normal tourist strip. Hijiri can't stop staring, yanking him closer as she spots a food stall and shrieks that they've got beef tongue skewers for cheap. The vendor grabs their order and serves up the goods. She whips around to him and explains this whole tourist spot was built right on ancient ruins. Then she taps her schedule and tells him she's got work waiting for her here too. He fires off, "What do you mean by that?" And while the words leave his mouth, it hits Hijiri like a lightning bolt. Right from where they stand, they can storm straight into the dungeon. Her idea lights a competitive blaze in her chest. She grins and dares him to race, shouting that whoever reaches the dungeon first gets to be the leader, while Heist just stands there, stunned by how wildly childish her excitement is. Barely a moment later, they're there. Towering over them is a colossal arched gateway, carved straight into the mountain, its dark mouth breathing out ancient power. Hijiri can't stop staring, but Heis narrows his eyes and declares it with grim certainty. The Delmadrome dungeon.